at South Central. I'm here for the 10,000 petitions on my family that we would like a Walmart around our community that will create jobs for our community and our surroundings. We could have a better quality. I have to drive to Cerritos just to go to a Walmart. I believe that if we could have a store like that around our neighborhood, it could be better for our community and our families. So the bottom line is that I'm here for the 10,000 people that signed the petition.
Okay.
So that's it.
Thank you for your time and your activism in your community. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we will be referring to the planning department this item and request.
I concur.
Good. Coordination with District 9. Okay. Councilman Rice has just joined us. Roberto, item number 3.
Item 3, Councilman, is a report from the CAO. It's relative to a request by the Department of Building and Safety in the amount of $756,723 from the Construction Services Trust Fund to continue Phase 2 of the Internet Document Imaging System.
Okay. Anybody here from the CAO, the Building and Safety, that would like to shed a bit more light on this item?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Tyler Munhall with the CAO. This is a request from the Department of Building and Safety for $757,000 from the Construction Services Trust Fund to continue Phase 2 of the Internet Document Imaging System. This part of the Phase 2 will convert 437,000 building permits to digital format, and the request conforms to the requirements of the Construction Services Trust Fund. The fund has cash available for the request, and we recommend approval of it.
Well, I like the way you kept that very general. How much cash is in there?
Excuse me. We actually have a current printout if you want to see that.
Yes. This is before or after the request?
This is before the request.
Okay.
There's $6.5 million available, cash available at this time.
Okay. Now, this is for processing documents and essentially bringing it up to current technological standards for easier accessibility, not only for the city personnel, but for the public. Am I correct?
That's correct, but I'll let the department.
Okay, please. Good afternoon. Please give us your name.
Karen Panera, and I'm with Department of Building and Safety. Roberto, did they get the sample conversion documents?
Yes. Maybe it's in the packet, yes. I think it's there.
All right, we have approximately 24 million images on microfilm.
24 million images.
Images on microfilm. We converted the certificate of occupancies over the last year and a half to, I think it's about 1.1 million certificate of occupancies. Until most of them were converted, you couldn't even read the images, and so therefore you couldn't index them and couldn't locate the record. And the same goes for many of the building permits, where the permits range from approximately 1905 in this particular grouping, 1905 to 1940. And the buildings do exist, and since many certificate of occupancies were not issued during that era, it's the city's only record which can prove non-conforming rights, as well as the real estate industry uses them daily.
Okay.
And
now, how long have you been in Phase 1?
Phase 1 was actually completed in 2005. That was when we implemented the base system, and the Phase 1 was just to create the infrastructure and the ability to store and retrieve the images. Phase 2 is actually a 10-year project. We're into year 3 of that backfile conversion project, and that's the 24 million images. It's been well received. Anybody that has connection to the intranet can access the images that are converted digitally. From the year 2004 and forward, all of the records in the department, the construction records, have been scanned and are available in digital format.
So the $756,723 that's been requested today, is that going to carry you through 10 years?
No, that's just for this particular era of building permits where we've prioritized the conversion of the records, and we come before the committee each time when we're ready to do another era of records. It would be too overwhelming to try to convert the 24 million images all at once, and too costly.
Right, so right now this area will cover,
About 1905 to 1940.
okay, and that's part of what, how many millions?
Approximately 1.2 million records.
So we have quite a ways to go then.
We do, but we already have 1.1 million in certificate of occupancies, and many of the images are construction drawings, and some of them we may never convert. That's why we prioritize them in the way we have.
Okay. Any questions from Councilmember Weiss? Seeing none, I'd like to move that we approve the CAO recommendation to allocate the $756,723, the Construction Services Trust Fund for the conversion of building permits dated from 1905 to 1924, from microfilm murals to digital image, to continue Phase 2 of the Department of Building and Safety's Internet Document Imaging System.
Thank you.
That'll be action of this committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So what other items do we need to get to before the main event?
I believe there's an item 6, Councilman, the
Okay.
director's report,
Okay.
but there is no report this week.
There's no director's report today? Okay. Thank you, Vince. All right, let's go. Item number 4.
That's the main event, Councilman. It's a proposed ordinance from the Planning Department proposing amendments to the municipal code to establish a revised sign ordinance.
And we do have community impact statements from the Greater Griffith Park Neighborhood Council and the Studio City Neighborhood Council on the record, and they're on the desk.
So that'll be on the record. And what we'll do is we'll hear from the staff. Once they have completed their presentation, we'll start with the cards. And from this point on, the public hearing is closed. So any of the cards that come in, we'll put your name on the record. But we do have a nice, healthy set of cards here, and
Yep.
take it away.
All right. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Alan Bell, Planning Department staff.
I'm sorry, Alan, before you start, I just want to say thank you and to the staff in the planning department, in the city attorney's office, and building and safety. Before the holidays, we pushed real hard to get to this point as soon as we could. Obviously, many folks took their vacation time, stayed home, worked on this effort, and I want to thank you for all the sacrifices that were made by the different staff from the various departments, both in building and safety and planning and city attorney's office. I know Department of Transportation is coming on board, and we're working with them more. But I want to just take the moment to acknowledge the hard work and getting us to this point now. How many planning commission meetings have already occurred?
Well, we had 5 meetings, including 4 public hearings.
So you had 5 meetings and 4 public hearings.
Yes.
And how long did each public hearing last?
It varied, but they could be several hours. We had 2 of the meetings were special meetings just on the sign ordinance itself.
So they went 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours?
I would say on average 2 hours.
Okay.
The special meetings were several hours each, 3 to 4 hours.
Okay. And that was 4 sessions?
4 public hearings, and then a final session, which there was not a public hearing, and the 5th meeting, they adopted this particular recommended ordinance.
So I'm sharing this with the audience here and for the record, because I want to make sure it's understood that, yes, you do have 2 minutes today, but there's been many hours in discussion in Planning Commission. What we are hearing today is the recommendation from the planning staff as interpreted through the commission. And that's what this committee is hearing today. And so I appreciate everyone's cooperation and understanding that we've given this as much public discussion as we could. And again, I just want to state that for the record. Okay, Mr. Bell.
Great, thank you. The ordinance before you today was prepared in response to a council motion to comprehensively revise the city's 23-year-old sign code. Specifically, the motion directed the planning department to revise the sign ordinance to toughen and create easily enforceable time, place, manner restrictions citywide to protect neighborhoods. The revised ordinance must also provide clear criteria related to land use designations for sign districts. The recommended ordinance was a product of an intense 4-month work program that included a public outreach meeting, 17 separate meetings and presentations before a variety of neighborhood and business groups, as well as numerous working meetings with our partners in this effort, the Department of Building Safety and the City Attorney. The City Planning Commission established a 4-member ad hoc subcommittee, which met 3 times to provide specific direction to staff. Over 200 speakers testified at the Commission's 4 public hearings on the matter, and almost 70 organizations and individuals submitted over 2,000 pages of written comments and exhibits. As part of this work program, staff researched the professional literature and analyzed the sign codes of cities within Los Angeles County and across the nation. We prepared 3 separate staff reports and 3 different versions of the sign ordinance, adapting each successive version in response to public comments and the Commission's specific direction to staff. On March 26th, the Commission voted to approve, with amendments, the final recommended ordinance. Adoption of this ordinance is an urgent matter given the pending expiration of the current interim control ordinance. That ICO, which Council adopted last December, prohibits for a 6-month period new supergraphics, new digital billboards, and new off-site digital billboards. Unless extended, the ICO will expire on May 10th. A new motion to extend it to June 24th should be adopted to allow sufficient time for a new sign ordinance to take effect. In line with the best practices of Los Angeles County's most business-friendly cities, the new ordinance provides adequate signage for most commercial and industrial enterprises while restricting the excess signage that contributes to visual clutter, ensuring that signs are legible and do not get lost in what is often called a visual shouting match. By prohibiting digital signs, the ordinance removes the potential driver distractions that may contribute to traffic accidents. It controls the size of jumbo wall signs, commonly called supergraphics, and it dramatically limits the city's discretion to grant exceptions, thus shoring up the ordinance's legal underpinnings. It accomplishes all of these objectives through an integrated 3-tiered system of sign regulation backed up by a new suite of strong enforcement tools. The first tier of the proposed sign ordinance is a set of baseline citywide standards that retains the current distinction between on-site and off-site signs. Tier 1 continues the current ban on new billboards. Tier 1 also prohibits new digital signs, both on-site and off-site signs, and includes a statement that Council intends for this prohibition to apply to the conversion of existing digital static billboards to new digital displays, regardless if a settlement agreement would otherwise allow such a conversion. Prohibiting new digital signs is a prudent measure while the federal government continues its investigation into the impacts on driver safety of digital signage, and also due to the environmental impacts of digital signs. One chapter of the U.S. Green Building Council estimates that the energy consumption of one digital billboard is equivalent to that of 49 typical billboards. Under the current code, digital on-site signs are allowed by right. If just one digital sign went up on each of the city's 120,000 commercial or industrial parcels, the increased energy consumption would put the city further behind its goal to promote sustainable green development and meet the statewide goal set forth in AB 32, which calls for substantial statewide reductions in the greenhouse gas emissions that contribute to global warming. In addition to these measures, Tier 1 prohibits roof signs and limits the height and number of pole signs. Most cities regulate the total signage that is allowed on a lot based on a combination of the lot's street frontage and its building frontage. Currently, Los Angeles allows 4 square feet of sign area on a lot for every linear foot of street frontage. This is far higher than any of the 6 Los Angeles County survey cities, all known for being particularly business-friendly, that we studied as part of our work program. The new ordinance trims the sign area ratio from approximately 4:1 to 2.5:1, factoring in both street and building frontage. It applies to both on-site and off-site signs, since it is the cumulative impact of all signs within a view shed that determines the visual quality of a street. The proposed 2.5:1 ratio puts Los Angeles in the middle of the pack, allowing a little less signage than Long Beach and Burbank, but more signage than Glendale, Santa Clarita, and Cerritos, and the same amount of signage as Pasadena. One issue expressed at the CPC's public hearings was whether this proposed ratio would provide adequate signage to attract customers and promote healthy retail sales. To test this hypothesis, we calculated the 2006 per capita retail sales of the 6 business-friendly cities that we surveyed and found that even though their sign ordinances were much more restrictive than Los Angeles is right now, they all had greater sales tax revenue on a per capita basis than the city of Los Angeles. Well, there are many variables that explain the differences in tax revenue. The data show that permissive signage regulations are not a necessary ingredient to stimulate healthy retail sales. Instead, the new, more balanced sign area ratio provides adequate business signage while furthering the city's long-standing goal to curtail sign clutter, in particular super graphics, which are enormous wraparound wall signs that can cover entire building facades. As a further measure to control super graphics, the ordinance also prohibits wall signs from covering doors and windows. Tier 1 also removes the current ban on new murals. Consistent with the ordinance's content-neutral focus, murals are regulated as wall signs and must conform to the area limits placed on wall signs. Nevertheless, given the important role that fine art murals play in the city's cultural life, the City Planning Commission also recommends that the City Council quickly act on a Planning Department report submitted last November to establish a Fine Art Murals Task Force in coordination with the Cultural Affairs Department. Finally, Tier 1 closes a major loophole. Under the current code, developers can file for variances from any provision of the sign code. The variance may be filed, for example, to allow super graphics, billboards, and digital signs of unlimited size. The new ordinance closes that loophole, eliminating the option to file for a variance. Instead, a developer must file for something that is now called a sign modification. The sign modification procedure does not allow a developer to request permission for new billboards or new digital signs, but only for an increase of less than 20% of an on-site sign's height, location, or size. A further relief mechanism in the new ordinance is called a comprehensive sign program, which is the second tier in the proposed ordinance's 3-tiered system of sign regulation. During the Planning Commission's many hearings on this matter, many commenters were concerned that, given the size and diversity of Los Angeles, the 2.5 to 1 sign area ratio might be too restrictive for larger projects with multiple tenants, such as shopping centers. Many cities have addressed this issue through a sign program, which is nothing less than a master plan for all the signs on a development site. Developers could propose and request approval of their master sign programs to the Director of Planning with an appeal to the Director's decision to the City Planning Commission. A hearing would be mandatory, with notice sent to all the owners and occupants within a 500-foot radius of the project site. The advantage of a sign program is that it allows objective review of the size, the illumination, the height, the projection, the location, and the street orientation of the proposed signs on large development sites to assure that signs visually relate to each other, that they convey a unified design and architectural theme, and that they are compatible with any residential uses. The amount of signage allowed under a sign program could not exceed the current code's baseline sign area ratio of 4 to 1. Furthermore, a sign program could not allow off-site billboards or digital signs. Instead, the recommended sign program is a procedure that merely allows the consideration of extra on-site signage for unique development sites subject to staff and public review. The third and final tier in the proposed sign ordinance is the sign districts. Sign districts are areas of the city that may allow otherwise prohibited signs, such as new billboards or digital signs. Under the current code, a sign district can be as small as 1 city block. It can be established over any commercially zoned property, over any industrially zoned property, citywide. Consistent with Council's motion, the new ordinance restricts the areas in the city where sign districts can be established to regional centers, regional commercial areas, and to downtown, areas that the general plan provides for the most intense commercial development possible. This new proposed restriction reduces by over 90% the acreage in the city that is eligible for sign district designation. The new ordinance establishes further limits on the ability of the city to establish sign districts. To ensure that sign districts are truly districts, that they are not literally established over a single lot, Tier 3 requires that each district cover at least 15 acres or include a minimum 5,000 linear feet of street frontage, which is roughly equivalent to 3 city blocks. Tier 3 also bars sign districts from abutting single-family neighborhoods. In addition, to ensure that the community benefits from the establishment of sign districts, Tier 3 includes a mandatory sign reduction feature. Under this feature, more existing billboard signage must come down than can go up, either within the sign district itself or within a surrounding sign impact area, which consists of those properties adjacent to the sign district and most likely to be impacted by the new signs. The mandatory sign reduction feature of this ordinance thus turns the sign district into potentially a powerful new tool to reduce sign clutter citywide. No ordinance is worth the paper that it's printed on unless it can be enforced. And to address this particular issue, the new ordinance imposes stiff new civil penalties for violations of the sign code. We borrowed this proposal from the City of New York, which has penalties that can range from up to $25,000 a day. And New York City's approach has been very successful in enforcing the provisions of their sign code. The Commission's recommendation is to vary the penalties on a daily basis from a low of $2,000 a day to up to $48,000 a day based on the size of the sign and if there are any repeat violations. The penalties are assessed against both the property owner and the sign owner, often different parties. So those numbers that I just cited to you should all be doubled. They are effectively range from $4,000 a day to $96,000 a day if the property owner and the sign owner are different parties. Collection of these penalties would be accomplished through a variety of procedures. The ordinance authorizes the City Council to place a lien on property if the property owner does not pay up. If there is a signed company, a lien is not an option, but we would have the ability to enforce collection through the city's contracted collection agencies. Another key feature of the enforcement mechanisms that we are proposing is to provide a right of private action to the owners and occupants within a 500-foot radius of an illegal sign to sue for damages in court. This feature empowers citizens to take action into their own hands if the city fails to enforce the sign code. This is a provision that we have borrowed from the City of San Jose, and it provides another effective measure of deterrence. Finally, the proposed ordinance includes new language enforcing the right of the city to receive reimbursement for the cost of enforcing the sign code if, for example, the fire department or the building and safety department were to go out and physically remove an illegal sign. We have inserted language that reinforces the right of the city to bill for the costs of that particular enforcement action, and that is within the new ordinance. In addition to the specific recommendations to the sign code that I've just outlined, the City Planning Commission adopted rules governing the transition from the current sign code to the new sign code. Specifically, the Planning Commission voted to grandfather in all discretionary sign approvals granted prior to what would be the effective date of the new ordinance. The Commission also took action on the 7 sign district proposals that are currently pending before the City. The Commission voted to only grandfather in 2 of these 7 proposals, specifically the Figueroa and Olympic sign district within downtown Los Angeles, which was approved by the Commission last December, and the Seward Street addition to the existing Hollywood sign district, which the Commission approved this February. The Commission did not vote to grandfather in any other pending sign district or special sign ordinance proposals. Those would be subject to the new ordinance's provisions. The Commission took 3 other actions on March 26, which I would like to outline. Pending further City Attorney review, the Commission recommended that the Council include a provision in the sign ordinance allowing the City to revoke the business licenses of sign companies that repeatedly violate the sign regulations or do not pay their civil penalties. This issue came up in the Planning Commission's hearings. The City Attorney and Planning Department staff did not have sufficient time to research this particular issue, but the Commission felt it was important enough to bring it before the Council's attention and urged that this matter be studied further. The Commission also instructed the Planning Department staff to develop, within 6 months of the adoption of the new ordinance, guidelines for the Commission's consideration on the establishment of sign districts. The Commission further instructed the Planning Department staff to convene a task force within 1 year of the adoption date of the new ordinance to review its impact and to recommend any necessary amendments. Finally, before concluding, I know I have been going on for quite some time. I would like to read into the record staff's response to some comments that were made concerning the environmental clearance for the proposed sign ordinance. These are comments that we received after the hearings, and we were not able to address in our supplemental report on the environmental clearance. So I would now am taking this opportunity to read our official response to those comments. Some public commenters have asserted that adoption of the proposed sign ordinance may lead to urban decay. The apparent theory advanced by these commenters is that the amount of on-site advertising and identification signage allowed under the ordinance is insufficient to support business operations, thereby leading to vacancies and urban decay. The Planning Department finds that this theory lacks merit or credibility. Staff have determined through extensive analysis that the proposed ordinance allows an adequate amount of signage to support business operations, while at the same time achieving the city's goal of reducing visual clutter and protecting the visual environment. The record contains substantial evidence to support the recommended level of signage, including but not limited to the supplemental environmental analysis contained in the staff report dated April 3rd, 2009. So that wraps up my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Well, stay tuned. Don't go too far. We've got the hearing to get through. I did want to ask Building and Safety, Mr. Adelman, is he in the room? Okay. Coming up, sir. Thank you for being here, Mr. Adelman. I appreciate that.
Good afternoon. My name is Hector Buitrago. I'm the Chief of the Code Enforcement Bureau at the Department of Building and Safety. We do have some questions related to the sign ordinance as currently written. The main issue is perhaps the distinction of on-site versus off-site signage. It is a matter of public policy, of course, but if the City Council and this body decides to keep the on-site, off-site distinction, we would actually recommend against it.
You'd recommend against the distinction?
We would recommend against keeping the distinction, yes. We would request clear and enforceable definitions of on-site or off-site if the definitions were to be kept. But that so far seems to be an unattainable goal. The current definition is not clear and does not accomplish what it was intended to do, which was, of course, to do clear and enforceable requirements based on time, place, and matter.
Throughout this discussion, as it was evolving through the commission process, you and your staff have been working with the planning department, am I correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
And the product you see before us now, based on what you just said, still needs more clarity, despite the fact that you and your staff and planning have been working on this? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, our position has been consistently that the on-site, off-site definition be removed from the ordinance.
Okay.
So we just wanted to restate our position from the beginning.
All right.
And there may be unintended consequences of keeping that definition in the books as currently is proposed. For example, even retail stores, markets, liquor stores, they can actually advertise many items that could be considered on-site. However, giving somebody the impression that they are actually billboards because they carry so many different products and they can advertise one that they only sell maybe very infrequently, but still once they carry it, even if it's not their main product, it would be difficult for us to say that it is not an on-site sign, which is the problem that we've had for years, that it becomes difficult to identify what is on-site versus off-site, because at some point it becomes very difficult to establish.
Well, we're here to clarify that, so we need to hear what you have to say.
Another issue that is brought up by the ordinance, and actually due to a court case, is that freeway signs, and by that I mean signs that are aimed at the freeway, that are primarily designed to be viewed from the freeway, will be allowed. Currently, the code does not allow such signs. As a result of a court case, that requirement was removed. We feel it's important for this body to be aware that without that restriction, you can expect the proliferation of signs aimed at the freeway. And that could even include billboards. There's many billboards in the city that have been approved to look away from the freeway. Once, they have only one-sided signs that point away from the freeway. They could come back and put in another face that actually would point directly at the freeway. Again, this is a policy decision, but we thought it'd be important for us to let this body be aware.
The intent of this committee is to stop that from happening, so.
As currently written, that is not accomplished, so we just thought that it would be important for you to know. There's the issue, as you will know, that the billboard sign company signed settlement agreements with the city a few years ago. It is possible, being that this ordinance will prohibit off-site signs, that there could be conflict and, possibility of a lawsuit from the billboard sign companies. And there's other issues that could be considered minor issues that we would entertain. We would talk to the Department of City Planning and the city attorney about in order to clarify the language of the code, such as the definition of wall that was introduced in this ordinance. We feel that definition is unclear, and it just adds difficulty for interpreting, what a wall sign is.
I appreciate what you're saying, but I wish you would have brought this up at the meeting before this meeting. But keep going, and are you almost done?
I'm almost finished, yes. There's, again, so just minor issues that I think we can clarify in talking with the Department of City Planning. Thank you.
Okay, in terms of enforcement, which to me has been the Achilles heel of this whole process, based on what you heard, given the current recommendation, is the enforcement capacity of the city there, given the fines that have been recommended?
I think enforcement is greatly facilitated by the administrative fines that this ordinance introduces. So yes, they should be a great help towards enforcement. Yes, no
If I
question.
can ask Mr. Adelman, if you don't mind coming to the microphone. I do want to ask a question regarding the department's capacity to enforce.
Actually, Councilmember, I was going to come up. That is the heart of the issue. The fines are substantial, and however, those fines go to the general fund. Currently, the Department of Building and Safety has something like 3 inspectors to enforce the signs. That is about 1 inspector for City of Cleveland. That's 1 inspector for 1.3 million people. So unless there is enhanced staffing to enforce the ordinance, it is going to be difficult. And the ordinance as proposed adds additional complexities because it creates sign districts and others, and in order for us to enforce it, we are going to need the resources to enforce it.
The reciprocation between increased fines, revenue generated because of the illegal signs, there should be resources for increased personnel. Am I correct?
That is the logical consequence. However, we are told that money, the fines go to the general fund, not directly to building and safety. Is that correct?
So what I need from you before we end this process is a recommendation of what it takes to enforce the law.
Sure.
We cannot afford any longer excuses or reasons for not implementing the law.
Yes.
We're way past that.
Yes.
We're here now. We're at a new juncture. We're coming before this body with a new recommended ordinance, and in it, I'm hoping as you as Director of Building and Safety will perform so that we can indeed implement this law.
We will do that.
Okay, so before these sessions are over, before we get to council, I need to know from you, what does it take to implement this law? From a personnel point of view, given the volume, given what is hindering your department from performing, I need to see that in writing.
We will get that to you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, is Department of Transportation here? Okay, if someone can call Department of Transportation, have them down here, because after the public hearing, I have a funny feeling we're going to have questions of them. So I would like to have my staff or someone call down to the department and have DOT present. Okay, any other departments? Madam City Attorney or City Attorney, anything else that should be added before we start the public hearing? Okay. That being said, please keep your eye on the clock. Many of you have written eloquent letters, and it's heartbreaking not to get to your conclusion. So if you can just keep your eye on the clock and get to your statement, please do so. If you agree with the person that has spoken before you, it's okay to say, I agree with the previous speaker, and give us new information. But to hear the same thing over and over again, you get the picture. So appreciate your cooperation. Our first speaker is Laura Salagi. Please come on up. Give us your name and address. Are you here? From the Venice Community Coalition? Okay. Oh, there she is. And following her will be Ingrid Mueller. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Laura Salagi from the Venice Community Coalition, and I am basically in support of this new ordinance, but I just wanted to state that I want to talk about the on-site signs and the great need for that regulation because on Lincoln Boulevard, which has been a topic of interest to our group for many years, the on-site signage has contributed to extreme visual clutter and the inability for the merchants there to really take advantage of the community because it's so ugly, nobody wants to go there. And the other thing is that although there has been a proliferation of signage on Lincoln that has been well beyond the regulations, there has never been enforcement. So I think the issue of enforcement is paramount. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Ingrid Miller, and then we'll have Richard Spicer.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I believe I'm reiterating the blight question about light. The light blight question has been surveyed by a very important medical group, and the conclusion was that if people close to, for instance, digital billboards have to deal with it 24/7, these persons were found to have sleepless nights more often than not. It's an established medical fact that that kind of blight is a definite negative human impact. There's another thing that I found in the page number 9, I believe, in the package that was mailed citywide. One of the sign districts from way back was still the Bayona wetlands. I don't understand. Phase 3 in Bayona for Playa Vista will never happen. That now belongs to us, the people, the Phase 3 district. I hope there are not other sign districts on that page that are not relevant anymore. I think notes. The 500-foot right for action. I know that sometime in the not-so-far future, we will have a giant commercial development in front of the apartment complex I have lived in for 20 years in Venice. And I think I'm maybe 502 feet away from it, but I would like to participate in anything that will go wrong there, if at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Spicer, then we'll have Mike Hernandez from District 8.
Thank you.
Following.
Thank you very much. Richard Spicer, as a volunteer for the Greater Griffith Park Neighborhood Council. You have with you a community impact statement and a 12-point letter. Following your direction, I'd like to just address some points we think could be improved in the current ordinance. Number one, have non-conforming signs have a provision about amortization, so we could see another way to reduce non-conforming signs. Number two, orders to comply be appealable by the neighborhood councils. Number three, we have spoken, yes, a private right of action broader than it is now, which now it's 500 feet. We think it should be broader than that to include other impacted parties. Number four, the special task force, we think that's very important. That's extremely well done. And with regards to we have said no new sign districts, but if they're passed, have the provisions that are in the ordinance. And the reason we say that, we have listened to some comments that it might be prudent to wait until key decisions are made on key issues by the federal court. And we're not clear on the response to that concern. That has led us to consider tonight whether or not the ban should be extended beyond June 24th. Thank you very much. We think the Planning Department, CPC, and Plum have done an excellent job in their leadership, and especially the work over the last several months. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spicer. Mr. Hernandez, are there any other council deputies in the room that would like to speak? Please come on up to the microphone.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm just here to point out one item that is a particular concern to Council District 8, and that's in regards to the Coliseum specific plan. The Cultural Affairs Commission had approved the amendments to the specific plan. The Planning Commission on March the 12th unanimously approved the amendments to the specific plan. And but for some reason it's not grandfathered in and it's pending before this committee. And so our concern is a lot of contractual agreements have gone through the process in terms of USC's use of the Coliseum. The actual signage square footage has been reduced. And it's gone through the process. The only thing that's pending is for it to come through the Plum Committee and then the Council. And so being that it wasn't mentioned as one of the grandfathered specific plans, we want to point that out to you because it should be, so that you could consider it and go through the proper process without being involved in this particular ordinance.
I appreciate that observation, Mr. Hernandez, and we're hoping other council officers who have such concerns would come before this committee. We're hoping our staffs are communicating in that regard as well, but I appreciate your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Just for the record, there is a letter from Councilmember Rosendahl on the desk. I don't know if Councilmember Rosendahl on the
Rosendahl.
Yeah, I don't know if the staff is still present.
Well, we'll be here for a little while, so maybe they'll get the word. Okay, our next speakers, David Kissinger, Gary L. Cook, and Brandon Stevenson. Please come on up. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Weiss. David Kissinger with the South Bay Association of Realtors, 22833 Arlington Avenue in Torrance. On this particular measure, I'd like to argue in favor, that you may hear later on, in favor of dividing it up and looking at each element specifically, the off-site and the on-site signage provisions. They are a little bit different, and they should be addressed in a different matter. And so, from my perspective, I like to talk mostly from the perspective of residential property sales signs. Just specifically on the matter of timing. Timing is a very sensitive issue, and it's something, whether you have a 30-day limit of timing or even a little bit longer than that, it's really hard for the listing, if they need to take it off the market and then leave it off for 30 days and pop it back on again. It reduces the ability for that seller and that agent helping that seller to move that house in an effective manner, and may be inconsistent with the city's own desire to mitigate its ongoing list of foreclosures and properties that are at risk of going into foreclosure. In fact, statewide right now, the California average for the days that a house is on the market is a little more than 52 days, almost 2 months. Something that would be impacted on this if, for example, a 30-day time limit were a part of this program. So what I'd like to request, if I may, is that you continue to look at this item, break it apart, and pay close enough attention to the real impact of what would happen on the different parts of this. And with that, I wanted to focus on the part of residential signage so that you could give an effective effort to that part of it as well.
So residential signs, you're referring
Right,
to
the residential
temporary
portions.
signs.
That's correct, temporary signs.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Cook, Brandon Stevenson, and Ed Wasserman.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good
My name is
afternoon.
Gary Cook. I'm the business manager of Plumbers Local 78, representing about 2,000 plumbers in the city of Los Angeles. Previously, this committee approved installation of an off-site advertising sign at our office location at 1111 James M. Wood Boulevard. This sign has been approved through adoption of the Central City West Specification Plan. A key part of this plan is a vehicle to support the local community. Specifically, we have an agreement through partnership with Miguel Contreras Foundation, which proceeds serves the local community and the Miguel Contreras Learning Center. As presented, the plan to the Commission recommends it would revoke our right to proceed with this approval of a sign. We would strongly urge the committee to proceed with the adoption and with our recommendation that this ordinance shall not apply to signs projects installed by the City Council motion before December 26, 2008, Section 1232 of the Code, and I have copies for the committee.
Thank you, sir. Brandon Stevenson, then we'll have Ed Wasserman, then Lucille Saunders.
Good afternoon, Chairman Reyes, Councilman Weiss. My name is Brandon Stevenson. I'm representing the Motion Picture Association of America, the association of the 6 major film studios. I'm here just to submit a letter to the record stating the MPAA's opposition to the proposed sign regulations. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the brevity. Mr. Wasserman.
Good afternoon, Ed Wasserman. I'm with Daktronics and also a member of the California Sign Association. In the city of Los Angeles, business vacancies are at an all-time high, and unemployment is now at 12%, the highest since 1974. We need to help businesses in the city and figure out how to save jobs in the economy, not turn our backs on those fighting to survive in this economy. I implore you to stop using sign codes and electronic signs to exacerbate the crisis. A rewrite of the on-premise signage regulations was never anticipated or directed by City Council. The proposed ordinance includes extremely restrictive prohibitions upon on-premise business signage, the very signs that businesses need to identify their locations, goods, and services. It will dramatically reduce their ability to reach the potential customer. There are no timelines or ICO restrictions with on-premise signs. Should this flawed ordinance pass, the results will include loss of additional businesses, jobs, and sales tax, as well as reduced property values. I respectfully support the success of businesses in LA and ask the commissioners to immediately remove any language change to the existing codes for on-premise signage, if not permanently to a future date. We acknowledge there is an issue with illegal supergraphics and unpermitted illegal signs, but the real issue goes back to a lack of enforcement over the years. The city would profit greatly, financially and otherwise, by implementing a program compelling the removal of signs not to code. Our company and all related sign companies would support this approach. Finally, we have provided specific language for the standardization of brightness levels, foot candles, hold times, and permitted applications for non-residential locations for digital signage. Planning Commissioner Wu praised this language with regards to existing signage, and we request that this standard be applied to new electronic message centers. Much as you have separated on versus off-premise signage from traditional signage, the same thing is said.
Mr. Saunders, Roberta Hamburg.
Thank you. Lucille Saunders from the Melrose Neighborhood Association, and we support the work that's been done to compromise and the compromised efforts for the comprehensive points offered to you, and especially that have been presented by the Studio City and the Greater Griffith Park Neighborhood Councils. We'd like the Plum to support and to pass these regulations of the new sign ordinance, but specifically to close some loopholes that are in the current ordinance. And this includes, we'd like to urge you to strengthen the off-sign ban that are now on the books, and to clarify the distinction between the on-site and off-site signs. We would like the sign district provisions eliminated altogether. This is the same as the variances that are now in the city planning codes that are spot zoning different planning efforts. And we'd like for the city to take down all illegal signs. The sign districts have come through a process that have not included the neighborhood councils, and we would like for you to look at that as part of the efforts of perhaps ending some of the special sign districts that are already in effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Saunders. Barbara Monahan Burke, then Howard Sunken, and then Gary Tobin.
Good afternoon. Barbara Monahan Burke, Studio City Neighborhood Council, but today speaking personally, I'm just going to take some of the comments out of the letter that I signed. Prohibit all super graphics, wall signs as they are now being called, are unacceptable. Otherwise, we are concerned that buildings will be constructed with blank walls just to accommodate them. Neighborhood councils, NC, should be notified of requests for an appeal of civil penalties and of proposed comprehensive sign districts. To have the code section be consistent, as Alan Bell had mentioned to me, notify neighborhood councils of all proposed items affecting billboards and signage rather than cutting them out of the process. Just put NCs in there in all places. At the present time, digital signs should be prohibited everywhere in the city, even in sign districts. The City Council voted to support state legislation, AB 109, that is being proposed by Representative Mike Fuhr in the state legislature for a 2-year moratorium. I ask that this be included in the city's ordinance at this time so that the federal and national studies that are being done to look at not only public health and welfare, but hazards to drivers, pedestrians, residents, property, and communities be included at this time in the city's ordinance. This should lead our way so that we make sure whatever is done with digital signs is done looking to the future, to our welfare. NC should be fully represented at the task force in 1 year, the work group that is going to be convened. There was no mention of that in the document. My final thing is to do with that the city of Los Angeles is not only urban, it is also suburban and rural. Studio City is suburban. And I guess that's it. I just want to say, sign districts, we have a problem with the two sign districts.
You packed it a lot in 2 minutes. That was pretty good.
Thank you.
Congratulations. All right. Mr. Sutkin, 7-0 team, LA Dodgers. Not too bad. Not too bad.
It's not how you start, Mr. Chairman. It's how you finish, right? Good afternoon, Mr. Michelson. Nice to see you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Weiss. I don't know how eloquent it is, but I have a nice letter to submit to you on some concerns that we at the Dodgers and the McCourt Group have about some proposed signage changes that's before this committee. So I'm just going to hit the highlights, and I'll let you hear from other folks here today. As everybody knows, 1960, a conditional use permit was issued to Dodger Stadium that allowed us to have signage in the stadium. And we sincerely maintain that it's critically important to the fan experience that those signs are allowed to stay and modified in the years to come. We hope the committee will direct the City Planning Department staff to work with us to ensure that language is clear, that all signs within our property are interior signs not subject to Municipal Code Article 4.4. The Los Angeles Dodgers must be allowed to continue to maintain signs that identify sponsors without the severe area, height, spacing, and number of sign restrictions and prohibitions for signs that are proposed in the sign ordinance. Please note that even the proposed new comprehensive sign program under the proposed sign ordinance would not be available to Dodger Stadium without the changes to the proposed ordinance, because the property is not located within a zone which these on-site programs would be allowed. That's very, very troubling to us. Without these changes, the sign ordinance will have significant negative economic implications for ongoing operations at Dodger Stadium. And as you are aware, Mr. Chairman, our next 50 project, which we hope to have at the EIR on the street sometime this summer, is critically important to the ongoing importance of Dodger Stadium. As Mr. McCourt has said repeatedly, the best thing we can do for Los Angeles is preserve that crown jewel. And that's what we're doing, and everybody's well aware that it's a critically important project, and we need to make sure that as we continue that process, that we are exempted out of this. I thank you for consideration. I'll turn this in for the record.
And it also helps to win as well.
Mr. Chairman, I'll do everything in my power to make sure that happens.
All right. Okay. Mr. Tobin.
My name is Gary Tobin. I'm President and CEO of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce, and thank you for your time today. As this ordinance is drafted right now, we oppose this signed ordinance. That's the first point. The second point is, as you move forward, we strongly urge you to separate out on-site regulations from off-site regulations. Every business, every educational institution, every entity in this community will be impacted by on-site regulations. I don't think I need to tell you that Los Angeles businesses are facing the worst recession since the Great Depression and are struggling to attract customers and keep their doors open. Added costs from regulations on sign will simply put more jobs at risk. You saw the report last Friday. The unemployment rate in LA County is now 11.4%. What you didn't see was that in the last 12 months, 252,000 private sector employees have lost their jobs. We can't do anything that would put small businesses and our other businesses in this audience at risk. Everyone will be affected by your actions. We understand the concern expressed by some residents about especially the large off-site signage. We believe you need to separate these two issues and address both of them. But keep in mind the impact. A business without a sign is a sign of no business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tom. Our next set of speakers, Bill Cooper, Veronica Beres-Becker, and Mark Sarzinski. I apologize if I mispronounced your name.
Good afternoon, it's Bill Cooper. I live at the Eastern Columbia building in downtown Los Angeles. I'm president of the Downtown Real Estate Association and also the committee chair for the Eastern Columbia Community Liaison Committee. I guess my point, I passed out some writings to you guys earlier, but I'll just say that as a full-time realtor in downtown, I see the importance of temporary signage for buildings with properties for lease and or for sales, and I would like ask that you allow more flexibility and a longer duration for temporary signs in the on-site regulation signage program to help us do our jobs. It's going to take, sometimes the commercial spaces will take 2 years, 3 years to fill. The Eastern Columbia building, we put up these beautiful murals on the corners, and the city has asked us to take them down. It would either be beautiful murals in the corner or looking into empty blank spaces, and we think that the murals actually contribute to the better aesthetics for Broadway than just the empty buildings themselves. So that's something that we would like to take into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Taking the time, Ms. Becker.
Good afternoon, council members. Veronica Perez-Becker with the Central City Association. We thank our tremendous planning staff for their hard work. Unfortunately, they are working under an unrealistic time frame to rewrite an entire ordinance with such far-reaching implications. The public has been clear that they are concerned about billboards and super graphics, not the on-site signs businesses need to survive. Yet this fast-track proposal suggests sweeping reductions of business signage with very little time for public review and comment. In these times of economic crisis, we must do all we can to ensure new regulations help rather than hurt our local economy. The current timeline does not permit that process. We ask that you separate the on-site issues for further analysis and input. In the alternative, we ask that you make significant changes to protect our businesses, including allowing more time for temporary signage, giving property owners only 3 months a year to advertise leasing and sales is simply not enough time. Especially in this crashing housing market, we should be giving property owners and our local economy every chance for success. We have submitted a suggested amendment. We ask that you eliminate the 5-acre requirement for comprehensive sign districts, which prejudices high-density urban areas such as downtown. We support the creation of sign districts in appropriate areas and grandfathering applications in the pipeline. These districts can complement neighborhood character, and to not grandfather applications in the pipeline would send the message to potential investors that Los Angeles will change the rules midstream. Finally, countless businesses, schools, and cultural institutions can benefit from properly regulated digital signage. Instead of banning any technology outright, the city should develop reasonable time, place, and manner standards to protect neighborhoods and business viability. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. And then we have Arnie Brighoff and Shiraz Tangri. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Tarzinski with CB Richard Ellis. I run the Urban Redevelopment Group in downtown Los Angeles. I currently have 45 signs in downtown Los Angeles. All of them are temporary, and all of them would be considered illegal if this ordinance were to pass as is. A little story, in the year 2000, I put up 4 8x10 signs on the corner of 9th and Flower. The developer, 6 months later, passed by that sign, called me on Christmas Day, and said he wanted to submit a full-price offer. That development today is the Ralph's development and the historic gas company Lofts. That yields about $4 million in extra tax revenue to the 9th District. Also, I was the one who sold 1100 Wilshire. That was also sold by a very large sign on the building. It would be considered illegal today.
Did you say 1100 Wilshire?
Yes.
Okay.
And I happen to live in 1100 Wilshire today, and that was a big office building before.
Right.
So what I'd like to implore you to do is to reconsider the ordinance as it relates to temporary signs and exempt real estate companies, both residential and commercial, from the temporary sign rules and regulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Burkhoff and Shiraz Tangri.
Council members, Howard Sunken of the Dodgers forgot to say, he told me in the back that if you didn't change it, that they were going to trade Manny. So.
So
I didn't say it. He said it. He said it.
Where's ESPN?
Good afternoon. I represent the California Sign Association. You've already heard from one of our representatives. I will not repeat what he said. But, and I rarely testify, but in this case, I thought it was important. All of the, for lack of a better word, all of the concern has been primarily that I've heard and that I've read in the LA Times, and we've met with many community groups, is about off-site signs. My association is primarily interested in the on-site signs. They're the manufacturer of those. And even the gracious woman here for the Venice Community Clinic who testified about Lincoln Boulevard, and it is a mess. I certainly agree with you. And those are all on-site signs, and they happen to be mostly all illegal signs. And if the current ordinance was enforced, you wouldn't be making those comments, because I think Lincoln Boulevard would look a lot better. So we certainly agree with you on enforcement. But we really do believe that it is necessary, as Gary Tobin had indicated, to separate the on-site and the off-site. They're very different issues. They affect virtually every small business in the city of Los Angeles. And we believe that there's no legal reason, there certainly is no time reason why they have to be pushed together. And there's not to say that there may not be a necessity to change some of the on-site ordinances, but to do it in this manner is really inappropriate, particularly at this economic time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker. After Mr. Tanguy, we'll have Phil Richt, and then I believe it's Jacqueline Kerr, if I'm reading it correctly. Please.
Good afternoon, council members. Shiraz Tanguy of Alston Bird. I'm the planning co-chair for the Downtown Neighborhood Council, and I'm speaking based on our experience downtown over the last several years. We certainly support the city's efforts to remove illegal and inappropriate signage. Our concern is that appropriate signage in the right location and properly governed can help create a sense of place. In downtown, we're working so hard, trying to attract investment, create unique, interesting urban places. And some of those are older places like Broadway that there's an intensive effort to try and redevelop. And some of them are brand new places like LA Live and the Grand Avenue project. And so on a detailed level, our concern are the sign district regulations and the comprehensive sign program regulations. We think both of them as currently drafted are too restrictive. There's a risk that they're going to stifle creativity. And instead of attracting and inspiring creative architects and designers to come in and create beautiful urban spaces, they're really responding to concerns about other parts of the city that have a different layout and a different feel than downtown. So we would ask that the city take a hard look at how sign districts and the comprehensive sign programs work in a vertically developed environment like downtown and regulate appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. We have next Philip.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Weiss. We represent Summit Media. That's one of the small billboard companies doing business here in the city. We only have one concern, and that is that this proposal does not go far enough to address all the issues raised by the settlement agreements. The settlement agreements have been granted to the four largest companies doing business. They represent over 90% of the billboards in this city. These companies were given the right to convert up to 900 of their billboards to digital, and they've already converted about 100, and that's one of the reasons we're here today. They also allow the companies to put up to 200 second faces on existing billboards, and they grant amnesty for permanent code violations for virtually every other billboard these companies have. No other company, including Summit, has any of these rights for the simple reason that these rights all violate applicable city zoning codes. And as every first-year law student knows, a city cannot do that. A city cannot waive zoning codes, even in settlement agreements. So these agreements are not only unfair, but they are illegal. Summit simply wants fairness. Either all these rights should be given to all the companies doing business in the city, or nobody should have these rights. Now, it seems like the proposed ordinance goes in the direction of saying nobody should have these rights, and in fact, it says that going forward there should be no more digital conversions. But it doesn't go far enough to really address all the issues. The proposal says absolutely nothing about the 100 existing digital boards. Instead, it grants these companies a permanent monopoly on those digital boards. It does nothing to address the rights to have 200 second faces. It does absolutely nothing to address this issue of amnesty on permits, and that is particularly galling because the City Council just a few weeks ago passed a new inspection law that applies to the small companies and gives them no amnesty whatsoever. So we would simply ask you to fix this situation, address it in its entirety, either give all the benefits to all the companies or take them all away. And we would suggest in that regard you consider revoking the settlement agreements. And I can give you legal authority that allows you to do it.
Thank you very much. Jacqueline Kerr and Andy Casania.
I'm Jacqueline Kerr from the Greater Griffith Park Neighborhood Council and the Barnsdall Art Park Foundation. I think first my neighborhood council would particularly like to thank Alan Bell for attending our planning zoning meeting and staying with us from roughly 7 in the evening until 11 at night. And we very deeply appreciate his dedication and endurance. Enforcement. We don't think this goes far enough, really. It gives them 4 chances to mess up, and if the city has to follow around after them on for 4 times, what happens after the 3rd offense or at the 3rd offense? Their business license should be yanked. If they can't figure out how to do business here legally, then they really should not be doing business here at all. And as far as the fines are concerned,
The GGP&C very strongly urges that the monies raised from these fines be sent to the building and safety people to add to their staff. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Andy Casagna. We have Rita Sevilla, and then Ruben, I believe it's Gonzalez.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Casagna, and I represent the California Restaurant Association's Los Angeles chapter. We're here to ask that the on-site portion of this wording be removed. In the restaurant industry, your signs are your lifeblood. You need your signs. It's the only way the customers know where you're located. And the way this is currently written, this will affect a lot of our members. And a lot of the members we have a lot of chain members, and they're constantly updating or upgrading how the facility looks. The way this is currently written, like a establishment like Jack in the Box, they've just come out with a new marketing plan. They would not be allowed to do these new signs citywide, and they have a lot of restaurants in the city of Los Angeles. So we would like to sit down and discuss this with the council and planning department and building safety, because this was recently added. This wasn't the original. The on-site was not part of the original wording. So we would like to be able to sit down, discuss this with the city, how it would affect the restaurant industry. We understand the illegal signs and all of that, so I'm sure we can discuss that and how to fix that. But this also is going to affect legal signs and create an unfair business level of competition between companies. So we're asking you to please remove the on-site portion of this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Rita Sevilla, then Ruben Gonzalez, I believe. Then Brent Puniwai. Yes, ma'am.
My name's Rita Villa. I'm a member of the Studio City Neighborhood Council. Today I'm here speaking personally. We've submitted a community impact statement. I submit the following comments for your consideration because the proposed ordinance does not meet the goal on page C2, which states that signs should not dominate the visual character of an area, and that the time, place, and manner restrictions citywide are to protect neighborhoods. A discretionary deviation of 20% is too large. There should be no exceptions. Exceptions lead to litigation. Allow only fine art murals to be installed on private property, and then only when approved by the Department of Cultural Affairs. Super graphics should not be permitted under the guise that they are fine art murals. The proposed ordinance would permit sign districts to include super graphics, digital and off-site and rooftop signs. Such signage would not comply with the code because they would dominate the visual appearance of the area. 2 years is too long for temporary signs on temporary construction walls. These often end up being super graphics. Additionally, they are a target for graffiti. I agree that specific plans should be allowed to be the same or more restrictive than the proposed ordinance. I foresee that sign districts will be detrimental to Studio City, both at the Metro Universal and the Universal Evolution sites. The ordinance states the proposed special sign regulations shall not constitute a hazard, and it states the proposed special sign regulations will not create light pollution or other negative environmental impacts that will materially detrimental to the character and development in the immediate neighborhood outside the proposed district. The impact of both the proposed sign districts noted above would clearly violate the intent of these provisions of the proposed ordinance. The unmitigatable impacts of such districts will destroy the character and quality of life in the Studio City community. I urge the Planning and Land Use Committee to extend the ICO and to ban super graphics and digital billboards, eliminating special sign districts, and to pass an ordinance incorporating the provisions that I and numerous other stakeholders of Los Angeles are requesting. We request that there be vigorous enforcement of the provisions of the law.
Thank you very much. Gonzalez and then Brent. I apologize, I mispronounced your last name, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ruben Gonzalez, and I'm here before you today as the Executive Director of the Hotel Association of Los Angeles. Hotels in the city of Los Angeles, along with our allied members, add their voice to the growing call for regulations of on-site signage to be removed from this proposed ordinance to allow time for true business and community input into how on-site signage should be dealt with. The reality is that signage is a tool that is different for different industries. For the hotel industry, for example, the limits proposed in here would have significant negative effects. From the presentation earlier, I think possibly the planning department has retired the visual they had of what hotel signage would look like under the proposed ordinance. And I guarantee you the signage is ridiculously small and inappropriate for what is necessary for our hotels. We use our signage not only to bring in new clients, but also to communicate with our patrons and with our conventioneers. This would not be possible under the limits that are in place. Further, most hotels in the city of Los Angeles are either owned by individuals or by independent corporations. They sign branding agreements with Hilton, Marriott, and other companies like that. That's what brings in business. That's what gets people interested. However, the current sign ordinance as written would cause the independent owners to be possibly in violation of brand agreements that require a certain area of signage for the Hiltons, for the Marriotts. However, this discussion never occurred because our industry was never approached to see what specific issues would impact us. In other words, no one took the steps to, instead of putting a cookie cutter law into effect in this ordinance, to actually see how it would differently impact different industries. The question is why? Why wasn't the business community engaged? Why is the on-site issues lumped in with off-site when we don't have any legal or time constrictions to do so? We should take the time, separate the on-site, take the time to sit with the business community, the various industries, and see how we can make a law that works and enforcement that can work.
Thank you very much. Next speaker? And then we have Cozell T. Boren, and then we have Gus Navarro.
Hi, my name is Brent Punivai. I'm a graphic artist and designer, and I've been working in the sign industry for 15 years. In the last decade, I've been working with the Small Business Administration, the Small Business Development Council, in developing their signage curriculum. One of the things I've noticed is when I was reading the current proposal is that very little deals with signage efficiency, and I've got to assume that an effective sign is really what you should be looking at as far as size. I mean, size is not as important as other factors such as, there's site-specific factors like traffic flow, speed and number of lanes, number of vehicles during peak business hours. These are the things that are important. Important things like environmental factors, like how the land, the topography of the land, etc. These are the things that need to be addressed in order to have effective signage. And I understand that you need a simple solution, but simple solutions rarely fit complex issues.
Okay.
Basically what I have.
The term you highlighted was signage efficiency?
Correct.
Okay.
Efficiency is in terms of how a business is capable of projecting to the public.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Boren and Mr. Navarro.
Mr. Councilman Reyes, my name is Cozell Boren, and 1445 West Sepulveda Boulevard, Torrance, California. And I'm on the California Sign Association Board of Directors. I'm an emeritus member. I've also served on the ISA board and the board of the Signage Foundation. And I'm saddened that the Planning Commission or whoever was responsible for it would group off-premise with on-premise. It's like legislating bicycles and trucks in the same basket. They are so different, and I would urge you to reconsider that, especially. Also, watching you today, I'm probably the senior member in this room, but I want to applaud you for having the feeling that you really listen. And your body language tells me that when someone mentions that not enough time has been put in this, that you kind of, the body language says, I don't agree with that.
Well, after being in the trenches as long as we've been on this issue, but I understand.
I understand it's about 10 hours, but really, and I agree with Mr. Puniva that it's a complex issue, it blows my mind that they would feel that their type of research would be effective. And also, I really feel that I enjoy watching you and your sincere focus and your concentration. I'm sure you believe in truth and reporting. This is a photograph that was presented to City Council to sanction and get approval for this Planning Commission to go forward. I'm not a professional photographer, but I'm a high-end amateur. It's been my hobby for 50 years. This photograph, to be, I wanted to say fraud, but I'm going to say...
I really need you to conclude, sir.
Sir?
I really need you to finish within your 2 minutes.
Am I over 2 minutes already?
Yes, sir. Yes,
You're
you are.
kidding.
Could we just finish your sentence?
Wow. Then this is just an example of, do I continue or stop or what?
Then you want to finish your thought?
Well, Councilman Weiss is not here, but Councilman Weiss is in a district where the businesses are national and international brands, very elegant businesses. They employ marketing firms and design firms. This picture is in Van Nuys Boulevard, and this is entry-level businesses. And Los Angeles has 400,000 of them. And these signs are unsightly, and it's clutter and all that. And I personally I photographed this myself. I have other photographs. But I sent a staff member to this area right here. There are 30 signs in this photograph. Only 3 of them are legal.
Thank you,
3
sir.
out of 30.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. I don't want to be rude, but we have a whole stack of folks, and we're limiting them to 2 minutes. So thank you so much. Mr. Navarro.
Thank you.
Yeah, just keep your eye on the clock. It's right there, and make sure you time your message.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councilman Reyes. Thank you, staff. Gus Navarro, 701 North Lackme Avenue, Wilmington Avenue. I have been a licensed contractor, electrical sign contractor in the city of Los Angeles for over 30 years. The current sign ordinance we have right now, there is no problem with the current sign ordinance. What we do have is a clutter of illegal signage. Signage that are installed without permits, signs that are added on Saturdays, Sundays, holidays. It's a clutter. It has, the previous speaker said 400,000. I think there's closer to 600,000 illegal signs in the city of Los Angeles. What we need enforcement on the existing signage that we have right now. I differ with the building department. They say they have 3 inspectors. I believe there's only 2 inspectors that do signage in the city of Los Angeles. With 2 inspectors, it'd be like having 2 policemen in the city of Los Angeles trying to patrol the city. It just doesn't happen. What's really difficult about this is that we need to have the enforcement now. There's many ways that I, as a contractor, am a 53-year resident, born and raised in San Pedro, that we could solve this problem. It could be self-generating. We need to bring industry, business, and the homeowners group together and sit down and discuss this. As it was said by the planner, we have never met with the planning on a one-to-one basis and discuss this issue. There's ways to generate money that it could be brought back into the building department. And I have commitment from industry that we're willing to help out in removal and disposing of clutter. I live in the city, and I think the clutter needs to be taken care of. I thank you for the opportunity that we have at this time right now to present it, because other than this, there's nothing the cities I can say has actually been done to reduce clutter. Illegal signage is at its biggest. We need to control it, and we do need to separate the on-site and off-site. We do need to preserve on-site business for business to come to LA and expand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Michael Pace, Haim Masnahari, Fred Storm, and Cindy Starrett. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Pace, and I'm here today representing the L&R Group of companies and our affiliates, Joe's Auto Parks and 5 Star Parking. Thank you, Chairman Reyes, for the opportunity to address the council today. Our CEO, David Damas, had wanted to be here today, but unfortunately is out on business in Chicago today. As you may know, L&R is a large stakeholder in downtown Los Angeles and has been for nearly 50 years. We're in the parking business, and use of signs for advertising is critical to the nature of our business.
Okay.
We concur with many of the comments you've already heard today about how this new ordinance would be detrimental to local business, and would like to go on record today opposed to any new restrictions whatsoever on the use of signs for business advertising. Further, we are in support of all existing and new sign formats, including large-scale graphics. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is the name and address.
Hi.
My name is Haim Mizrahi, and I am the landlord of the property located at 1299 South La Brea. I have a sign in my property already 40 years, and I would like to change it to a digital sign, because that will prevent the gang activity there. It's bring light, it enhance the place, it's bring business, it's beautify it, and it's the time to get into the progress and not to go back to the dark ages and to stop the technology to immerse. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker?
Yes, I'm Fred Stern with Encore Image in Harbor City. I'd like to provide the committee a copy of a study by Charles Taylor, PhD, and John Murphy, professor at Villanova University Center for Marketing and Public Policy. The study presents results from a survey of over 300 respondents. These represent small and medium-sized businesses in both service and retail industries. The study notes that signs provide a cost-effective way for smaller businesses to, 1, build franchise and brand awareness, communicate location, and reinforce advertising and promotions, all of which allow small businesses to build brand awareness, equity, loyalty, and ultimately profitability and survival, which in today's environment is critical. Key findings of the survey were that over 85% of the businesses reported that they would lose over 30% of their revenue with ineffective signage on premise. Small and medium-sized businesses don't have cost-effective alternatives to signage. And finally, they concluded that on-premise signage is a critical element of success for small and medium-sized businesses. And as such, I recommend that the on-site portion be removed from the ordinance.
Thank you, sir. At the city stair, we have David Goldberg, then Beth Gordy, I believe, then Mark Phillips. Good afternoon.
Good morning, council members. I'm Cindy Starrett from Latham & Watkins, and we do appreciate the hard work of the staff and the City Planning Commission. The analogy you heard earlier, though, is a good one. The ICO regulates 18-wheel trucks, but this ordinance regulates every car in the city of Los Angeles. And that's why it's been such a tremendous issue. The first draft in January cut all sign rights by 75% for all on-site businesses, and the draft that is before you from the Planning Commission cuts it by about 40%. So that is definitely better than 75%. The question about the 40%, though, is do we have a one-size-fits-all ordinance that still needs a lot of work before the council can adopt it and be confident that it fits the diversity of Los Angeles, that it allows underserved communities in Los Angeles that deserve new investment to continue to have that investment. One example we talked to the Planning Commission about is the Plaza Pacoima project in Councilmember Alarcon's district. There is an 80-foot pole sign there for the Costco and Best Buy, approved unanimously by the community as part of a community benefits agreement. A project like that could never be approved under the ordinance that's before you today because the City Council would no longer have the ability to do CUPs and variances, and because no pole sign could ever be above 50 feet, even if the freeway is 80 feet. We think the council should retain discretion to address economic impacts. The Planning Commission actually acknowledged that their focus was on aesthetics, and that the economic issue should be devoted to you all, and so that's why we're here, and we really appreciate your patience. We've submitted to you some graphics. This one's called Signs in the Los Angeles Identity. This talks about specific plans and the fact that specific plans should be allowed to authorize signage. Many major investors in Los Angeles, Forest Lawn, Universal, are doing specific plans. We've also submitted detailed language on comprehensive sign programs. There are a number of attachments with very specific language. We ask that staff work with us, try to work out these issues. Thank you very much.
And for folks, we did close the public hearing at the beginning of this item, only because we have quite a few speaker cards already, and I'm concerned about the quorum, so I just want to make sure we move this as fast as we could, please.
Good afternoon, David Goldberg, Latham & Watkins. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I'd just like to raise a handful of points related to specific plans and sign districts that are contained in our submittal. With respect to specific plans, we ask that they continue to be available as vehicles for broader signage rights. They undergo thorough public vetting with respect to the uses and developments in the area, and we believe that signage can be appropriate in those areas, and that to address any concerns related to recent court rulings, revised findings requirements can be incorporated to allow specific plans to grant broader signage rights. At a minimum, we ask that future amendments to existing specific plans be permitted because the city has already determined that broader signage rights are appropriate in these areas. With respect to sign districts, you've already heard a plea for grandfathering for those that were initiated prior to the ICO, so I just wanted to echo that point. With respect to new sign districts, I wanted to echo a point that you've also heard about providing a vehicle for properties in denser, more urban areas such as downtown, where you have the vertical development, where you don't have 5,000 lineal feet of frontage, you don't have 15 acres, but you have properties where broader signage rights would be appropriate. We believe a threshold such as 300,000 square feet for additional signage rights and qualifying for a sign district would be appropriate there. In addition, we ask for an alternative mechanism to sign reduction for sign districts that would allow for either community beautification or other public benefits such as revenue enhancement, job creation, etc., because what you have are some areas where there's not already enough signs, enough off-site or digital signs in the area to be taken down to allow an area to qualify for a sign district, and we believe another mechanism such as those types of public benefits would be appropriate. And finally, we ask that you reconsider the strict prohibition against having sign districts adjacent to single-family zones. We think that through design review and just ensuring that such signage doesn't face those zones, those types of concerns can be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Beth Gordy of Latham and Watkins. The proposed ordinance does not provide adequate relief from the baseline signs allowed for on-site signs. The council must retain the ability, which it has under the current sign regulations, to approve variances and conditional use permits and give this city the flexibility it needs to permit necessary and appropriate signs. In addition, this committee should clarify the definition of exterior signs within the scope of the ordinance to avoid the unintended application of the sign ordinances to signs not visible or only incidentally visible from public rights-of-way. We've attached specific language at tab 7 with suggested revisions to clarify that the sign ordinance remains inapplicable to these such signs. We also have several requested modifications to promote fairness and to protect business viability in the city. First, with enforcement. Staff noted that the tougher enforcement provisions are intended to focus on illegal off-site signs. To that end, they are inappropriate and misplaced for on-site signs in the city. Similarly, the private right of action should be limited to off-site sign violations. We also request that fees for comprehensive sign programs and modifications be more appropriate and consistent with comparable planning department fees. We've suggested language as in tab number 8, and also that the transition rule should be broader to include all signs with prior approvals that should be grandfathered under the existing regulations. We have specific language to accomplish that goal at tab number 9. We again request that this committee direct staff to review these issues and to work and collaborate with stakeholders to work them out where possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Right under the wire. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Phillips. I'm Vice President of Brookfield Properties. Brookfield is a major investor in LA, and we own 3 downtown high-rises and the 7th and Fig Retail Center. Brookfield's initial concern is that this ordinance does not adequately consider the high-density urban sites. Despite containing more than 1.2 million square feet, the Ernst & Young Plaza 7th and Fig Retail Center site would not meet the minimum acreage for a comprehensive sign program. It's necessary to have a comprehensive sign program, particularly in light of the application of fairly simplistic standards to complex mixed-use sites. Complex mixed-use sites that are, have a lot of vertical challenges are very challenging to interpret. The idea that we would have a private right of action available when I've got literally thousands of attorneys within 500 feet of my sites is frightening, frankly. We needed to create these kinds of sort of a safe haven of agreements as to what is appropriate and what isn't, and we want to make sure that these kinds of mixed-use sites that the city wants and needs is included. So we would encourage the elimination of the acreage requirement. I'd also like to address the difficulty in attracting major suburban retailers to a downtown environment. Two-thirds of the square footage of the 7th and Fig Center is below grade, and the availability of adequate street-level signage is an overriding factor in attracting major retailers to the project. They know what they need. They tell us it's insufficient. Our third concern is that these be the subject of public hearings. We haven't had good experience with comprehensive design programs being subject to public hearings in other venues.
You can submit that for the record?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
It's a little marked up, but I'll get you one that I...
Yes, thank you, sir. John Anderson, Angie Espinosa, Steve Nissan, and Eddie Carey, I believe. Have to come on up.
Good afternoon. John Alderson with Westfield. We submitted a letter to the CPC with photos showing the impact that the proposed ordinance would have on our properties in Los Angeles. We appreciate the planning staff's consideration of our concerns, but the changes requested at the March hearing were not made. I have distributed copies again today of our photos showing these impacts. We appreciate the suggestion of the comprehensive sign program. However, changes need to be made to this provision to make it work for these large properties to allow them to attract the retail tenants, customers, jobs, and revenues that Los Angeles deserves and needs. The first issue of 4 with the proposed ordinance is the height of the pole signs. The exhibits of our Fashion Square project show that the adjacent freeways are much higher than the 50-foot maximum staff is permitting for pole signs, even through the comprehensive sign program. Our properties must be identified so that travelers can find them and shop at them. Variances and other reliefs need to be provided without the 20% cap proposed in the new ordinance to ensure that Los Angeles can continue to have such signage adjacent to freeways. Second, we want to confirm that the comprehensive sign program will allow monument signs, information signs, and signs that are necessary to be the appropriate size for these large properties. We believe that this is the intent, but we ask that it be spelled out clearly in the proposed ordinance. Third, when modifications are made to the signs, such modifications should not be separately appealable or require the fee that staff has proposed. We need to be able to change tenant names or make other appropriate changes without cumbersome modification processes. And finally, a comprehensive sign program should allow digital signage. Many of our signage needs includes movie theaters, and this new technology is important to Los Angeles. We appreciate your hard work and that of the commission and staff, and we ask you to consider our needs with our businesses.
Thank you, sir. We have Angie Espinosa, Steve Nissan, and Eddie Carey.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Weiss. My name is Steve Nissen, and I'm with NBC Universal. Mr. Bell from the Planning Department early on in this hearing noted that the proposed ordinance would be sufficient for most commercial and industrial enterprises. I'm here to say, at least for us, for Universal Studios Hollywood, we are most decidedly not like most commercial and industrial enterprises. We have over 5 million visitors who come to Universal Studios each year. We are a major economic engine, both for the city and the county of Los Angeles. Our signs are not of the type that are contemplated by city planners. Our signs are a big electric King Kong, the size of this window and archway, a guitar that's 3 stories high in front of the Hard Rock Cafe on City Walk. We have a spaceship coming out of a wall. These are our signs, and they're decidedly different from that's contemplated in what we perceive as a cookie cutter ordinance that really robs the city of some of its iconic signs. I just want to say that the proposed sign district would be insufficient for us because the size of our parcel in the city of Los Angeles is far too small to qualify. A specific plan, which typically would be helpful, can't override the proposed ordinance, so that is of no benefit to an entertainment district like ours. And my final observation is that you may realize that much of Universal Studios is in the county of Los Angeles. There are portions in the city. One of the most iconic portions is the giant globe and fountain. All visitors to the park see that because it's at the entrance to the fountain. They come from all over the world. They take pictures and mementos. And if this proposed ordinance passes, it will take away the creativity necessary to keep us competitive.
We have a comment from Councilman Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know you have a lot of comments left, and I don't want you to lose a quorum. There's some legislation I want to do today, or propose, that's responsive to what a lot of people have said, so I hope folks will be stingy in the comments they make coming forward. On this point that Mr. Nissen raised, which echoes the point that Mr. Sunken raised earlier, whatever you think of the problem of billboards and signage in Los Angeles, however strongly you feel about it, you are undoubtedly not thinking about Dodger Stadium and Universal Studios and Universal City. So I'd like to ask Mr. Michelson and Ms. Burge from the City Attorney's Office, when we come back next time, can you provide us with a way to address, and it's not just those two institutions, there are other institutions, entities, sites in Los Angeles that are, I don't know how you want to define them, but whether it's they're inward looking or they are hermetically sealed, or it is by and large, the signage is not out and exposed and open to the public or the public right of way. And I don't want to get us down the road of where we're going to end up in litigation with one of these guys who always seeks to, bend and twist our rules by. But is there a way to deal with this? Because this is obvious.
I really believe this is awkward. We have a lot of folks who want to speak. You're making recommendations of legislation, and the public hearing is about public hearing. I understand what you're saying, but
I'm responding to it. Just let me ask the city attorney if there's something they can do that, and then we'll go back to the public hearing.
Press it. Thank you, Council Member Weiss. David Michelson, the City Attorney's Office. Yes, we were thinking the same thing, that the ordinance really is designed to speak to signs that are visible from the public road right away. But we will further consider the issue, maybe have an intent provision as an ordinance.
Status, maybe there's a certain way to categorize these destinations like Universal City and Dodger Stadium. But I really think for the sake of process and the integrity of this committee that we continue the public hearing. I appreciate what you're saying, Councilmember, but I don't want to take away from the folks who want to say something to the committee. So Angela Espinosa, Eddie Carey, and Michael Tantella, please come on up. We'll keep going. Robert Davis. Kevin Norton, please give us your name and address. So Angie Espinosa is not here. We'll put that aside. Eddie Carey is not here. We'll put that aside. Michael Tantella? Okay, please.
Yeah, so I'm Robert Davis. I'm the business manager of the Studio Utility Employees from the Laborers International. I do represent a number of members who work in the billboard industry. I wanted to come here to say that these are permanent jobs. These are careers, actually. These jobs, my members, excuse me, my members average between $60,000 and $105,000 a year, plus health benefits, plus a pension or retirement packages. I wanted to share a little story with the committee. 2 weeks ago, had a member come in the office thanking me greatly for the health benefits he has. 38-year worker for CBS Outdoor Billboard Advertising, retired April 1st, and because of the pension package he has, he will be able to remain here in LA instead of being one of the retirees who's looking to move somewhere else where it's more affordable. These people, my employees, my members that work there, They also they have the ability to go out and purchase things in the community of LA. It is important that we do things for these jobs. There's a new company that's come into town. They want to do some modifications to their boards. They need to have the freedom to do this. This will create a lot of good jobs. We are sitting down in discussions on how we're going to go forward with a union agreement, and I do urge that the committee pass or change this ordinance, eliminate it, modify it, find another way to sit down with these companies and work something out that's amicable to the people who have to live in the city and that they can also survive in, tying their hands and making it so that they cannot make the changes that sometimes you guys might deem necessary, giving them no other option but to try and hang on to these boards that sometimes maybe they might want to move. But I highly advise change this ordinance, sit down, work with these companies. You'll find the good companies that will sit down, they'll come up with reasonable ways to resolve these issues, and you do need to deal with the people who are operating illegally out there. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Norton. I represent IBW Local 11. We have significant concerns with the way it impacts our members who work in the sign industry as well as the billboard industry. We also have concerns with the impact on the electronic signs, which is the wave of the future. We have significant issues with how the other part of the sign ordinance would impact our members who work in construction. Often the super graphics make developments pencil out so that our members can build those buildings and we can have development in the city. So I have some of my members here came with me. They're all concerned that the impact it's going to have on jobs in the worst economy since the Great Depression. So I would ask you please to reconsider this ordinance. I think it goes far too far. It's very onerous. It impacts everybody from parking lot owners to construction workers to Dodger Stadium. When you have that many people against an ordinance, you know there's something wrong with it. So I think it needs to go back to to be looked at again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Michael Tantella, Gary Parker.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Michael Tantella. I'm a traffic safety expert from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, an engineer with my consulting firm, Tantella Associates, and a research fellow at Princeton University. As I'm presenting technical findings today, I offer some of my credentials for the record. I've earned my bachelor's degree from the University of Pennsylvania and graduate degrees from Princeton University. As a professional engineer and a researcher through my firm and at Princeton, I've had the opportunity to work on numerous research projects for diverse clientele spanning government, industry, academia, including the Federal Emergency Management Agency and state agencies. I'm a licensed professional engineer in several states and a National Council Model Law engineer. I've authored numerous technical reports and peer-reviewed publications. Some of my work has been published with the Transportation Research Board of the National Academies, and I've presented findings to numerous transportation organizations. For the better part of a decade, my firm and I have conducted traffic research examining the statistical relationship between billboards and traffic safety. More recently, we've studied traffic safety near digital billboards, specifically in two states, Ohio and Minnesota. These billboards are similar to those under consideration by the committee, specifically the off-premise boards that display static messages with no flashing, no scrolling, not the super graphics or on-premise. In 2005, we conducted a study, a 4-year study of conventional billboards along New Jersey Turnpike. In 2007 and 2009, we completed 2 research studies using methods we've published previously to examine the statistical relationship specifically between digital billboards and traffic safety. The 2007 study analyzed 33,000 traffic accidents near 7 digital billboards along interstate routes. Our findings conclude that there's no statistically significant increase in accidents
Can you sum up that for the record?
near traffic metrics.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary Parker, Steve Jones, Ray Baker, Marshall Hanscom. Any folks here? Please come on up.
Honorable Council Members, Marcia Hanscom. I'm here as a resident of Playa del Rey and also representing the Bayona Institute, Coastal Law Enforcement Action Network, Wetlands Defense Fund, and the Sierra Club. I'm here because, if you'll note on page 10 of your staff report, you have a chart that includes the Ballona wetlands as one of the districts that has been designated for these sign districts. This is right in the middle. I've looked at the map on the Planning Commission website, and it's right in the middle of a state ecological reserve. It's in the coastal zone, which also would require a coastal development permit, and I believe the Coastal Act has some very serious things to say about signage in the coastal zone. And I also would like to make sure that you have on the record, I've got several reports here from Dr. Travis Longcore and the Urban Wildlands Institute that talks about ecological light pollution and how, not just with the new digital billboards, but the other billboards, how the lights can actually cause catastrophic consequences to the life cycles of many of these wildlife species. We have migratory birds coming through here. We have lots of different species that are actually impacted because by having light shining on them, and that's why we don't have street lights in that area, in fact. So I would hope that you would direct staff to remove this from the chart. I was told many times that it would be removed. It hasn't been removed, and I think it needs to be removed before it goes to the council. I think this also begs the question as to what other areas are in these designated sign districts. Are there any that are close to the Los Angeles River, close to other wildlife corridors in Santa Monica Mountains? And I think that the question about how these particular sign districts were designated is a very big and important question that needs to be answered.
I have a question for Councilman Weiss.
Ms. Hanscom, if you could just speak with Ms. Trifoletti, my counsel over there. I think she's got a way out for you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Weiss. Next, please.
Yes, Steve Jones. I'm here today representing the California Sign Association. Our 200 members represent many of the thousands of businesses here in Los Angeles, as we've maintained a business relationship with them for many years. I'm also a vice president for Young Electric Sign Company, a leader in the industry for 90 years. Most of my issues have been addressed, and so I'll just limit it to one, and that's something that I feel is an unfortunate result of this public outcry against illegal super graphics and the rapid but legal conversion of billboards to digital. The reaction to that by planning staff primarily has been to attempt to eliminate an entire technology, that of electronics. This technology has been embraced by every city across the United States. Every large city, every small city, even the city of Los Angeles has embraced this technology in its public venues as well as in public transportation. It's a technology that represents the future. It's efficient, it's effective, and the total elimination of electronic technology is a big mistake moving forward as advertising agencies, businesses across this nation, as they continue their conversion to digital, the city of Los Angeles will fall farther and farther behind in its ability, speaking of its businesses, to sell its products and to be able to relate and reach out to the public in general. So I would urge the council members to consider this as they move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. Next, please.
Good afternoon, council members. Ray Baker, Lamar Advertising. I'm the Vice President and General Manager for the Los Angeles area. For our company, we purchased Vista Media approximately 1 year ago. They have the majority line share of the signs here in Los Angeles, over 40%. Our goals, obviously, as the largest digital provider in the country, we have over 1,100 digital signs in the continental United States operating in hundreds of cities who, as Mr. Jones has said and a few of our other folks have said, there's really no issues that we can determine at this time about the safety and or, I guess, ecological benefits that or negative impacts that it has. For our company, we would just like to oppose how the ordinance is currently written and let the city and everyone know that we're here to work with you and our intentions are to help you in any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dennis Hathaway, and then Ryan Brooks, and then Martha Cox Nickinson. Yes. So Dennis Hathaway here? Okay. It's okay. Come on, ma'am. It's okay.
Let's just keep going. My name is Martha Cox Niddickman. I represent the Building Owners and Managers Association of Greater Los Angeles. We understand the city's need to create greater uniformity of regulation and to begin to address the causes of concern among many of our citizens. We feel it is entirely appropriate to ban or limit certain types of off-site advertising, including supergraphic signs. Our concern today lies with the proposed limitations on on-site signage. The proposed rules go to the heart of a business's ability to communicate about their services. As you know, commercial high-rise office buildings most often have ground floor retail tenants who seek to advertise their presence. Clothing stores, banks, restaurants all benefit from signage on the building. Reducing sign size not only affects the building owner, but could severely limit foot traffic for retail tenants that are struggling to bring in customers. We ask that the on-site signage be separated from the issue of off-site signage. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Dennis Hathaway, Ryan Brooks, and then we'll have Lane Lawson.
Good afternoon. I'm Dennis Hathaway, president of the Coalition to Ban Billboard Blight. I've submitted a letter with some of our points about the sign ordinance, which we really want to support it. We think it's, for the most part, it's a very significant improvement over what we've got right now. So I won't belabor those points, but I want to respond to a couple of points that were made by other speakers. One about the sign reduction in sign districts. This is, I urge you not to tamper with that provision. This is absolutely critical part of the sign district provision, is to have sign reduction, because we have seen the history with sign districts in this city has been significant sign proliferation. And this is a true community benefit to have a reduction in the kind of signs that are visual clutter, that are visual blight, that will really improve and enhance neighborhoods by getting rid of them. I also want to respond to the some comments made about digital signs. I echo the speaker who spoke about energy consumption, who spoke about light pollution, but traffic safety. The gentleman who spoke about, who had conducted the studies, neglected to mention that those studies were sponsored by the outdoor advertising industry. And in fact, a study commissioned by the Association of State Highway Transportation Departments just today was released, which analyzes all these other studies, including those studies, and comes to some fairly scathing conclusions about the quality of those studies that purport to show that digital signs are safe and they have no effect. And I will concede my remaining 5 seconds. Thank you.
Wait, wait, wait. 5 minutes to 5 seconds. Okay, Ryan Brooks and then Lane Lawson.
Good morning. Thank you for this time, Mr. Chairman and Councilmember Weiss, for this time. I'm going to make a few several points in a short amount of time here. Number one, the distinction between on-site and off-site signs. In 1982, the state Supreme Court in the California versus Metro Weiss case gave this city and every city in California the opportunity and the right to make the distinction between on-site and off-site. By bringing those together, you'll have to treat everyone the same. And I work for CBS Outdoor, an off-site company. If you treat everyone the same, that means you'll have to tax us the same. That will be the largest tax increase the city has ever seen in its history. We pay into a fee per sign. You'll have to charge us on-premise signs the same amount of money in order to be constitutionally legal, number one. Number two, I want to talk about jobs. 70% of our businesses here in Los Angeles use off-premise signs. No one here, the City Council, the Plum Commission, haven't addressed that issue. If you take away off-site signs, you take away our ability to convert, what impact does it have on the city of Los Angeles and the jobs of the people here in Los Angeles? You heard today from our unions. I've gotten calls all week long, all month long. They've asked me, what is the city council doing? What is the city of Los Angeles doing? How are they protecting our jobs? How making this type of change in the ordinance will help with economic development? And I told them, it won't. It will hurt economic development. We believe in enforcement. We've brought stacks and stacks of papers of locations of illegal signs throughout the city, and to no avail. We actually fought hand in hand with the city on the Metro Lights case. We provided an advocacy brief taking the side of the city. We've also went in front of the Ninth Circuit and pleaded your case, and we're asking the city council to have an ordinance that is a smart ordinance. I've seen ordinances from California to New York. New York was brought up today, local law 14. It has been a nightmare. This is going to be the largest works program for the attorneys in the city of Los Angeles that I've ever seen. I know the intent, the purpose of the Planning Commission and the council, but the way it's written today, it just won't work. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Ray Lawson and Sandy Bradford, and I believe we have Faisal Alisaro as well. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Chairman. Lane Lawson, Clear Channel Outdoor. I'm the Director of Public Affairs for Southern California. Just want to echo what my other colleagues have said in the industry. We do have a lot of concern about the new ordinance. We do believe in strong enforcement. Actually, the industry has given the city over $1 million to start their enforcement in the new inspection fee program. Yeah, that was just a couple months ago that we gave that. All the Clear Channel Outdoors digital billboards are fully permitted by the city. All of our wall signs are fully permitted by the city. However, we do know that there are people in the industry who put up these illegal wall signs, and we fully expect the city to go after those people, to go after those companies, and bring them up on charges. We don't have any of those signs, and we respect and hope that the city would go after those companies. As far as digital goes, none of our signs contain movement. We are static for 8 seconds at a time, and then it changes to the next message. This technology is being used by our company and other companies throughout the nation in partnership with the FBI and local law enforcement to help find and capture criminals, as well as using them as part of the Amber Alert system. So we respect what the city's trying to do. We just hope that they take a little bit more in-depth look at what they're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sandy Bradford, Richard D. Senna, or A, and Greg Freeman.
Yes, thank you. I'm Sandy Blyfer. I'm a recovering artist and muralist, and working for the last 12 years as a real estate broker on the revitalization of downtown. For decades, LA has been in an advertising time warp due to the billboard moratorium. While we are now resuming the billboard wars of Lady Bird Johnson's highway beautification program, the entire world of advertising, psychology, and technology have eclipsed us. Billboards are passé. We are entering a brave new world where advertising is done in a very targeted way through internet-based communities, networks, and interactive opportunities. It is no wonder that people are surprised to see advertising formats the likes of which have branded Tokyo, New York, Las Vegas, and which are responsible for their economic success, while we have been in the backwaters all these years. Like the rest of the world, Los Angelinos will come to enjoy the energy and changing landscape of contemporary forms of building signage. Digital signs should be allowed on all buildings. Allowing digital signage will reduce the sign area needed by a building because the building can advertise its retail tenants, their special offerings, its vacancies, directions to parking, public service announcements, all in one sign. The reduction of sign area from 4:1 to 2.5:1 in the proposed ordinance is based on other cities which are not as automobile dependent as LA. Signs that are viewed primarily by pedestrians can be smaller and located lower on buildings. Signs viewed at higher speeds and from greater distances than pedestrians must be large enough and positioned well enough to communicate to someone who is driving. We are not like Chicago, New York, and Portland. We are not a pedestrian-oriented city, much as we would like to be.
Thank you, ma'am. Attorney Senna, Greg Freeman, and then Sean Bagsby.
Good afternoon, council members. Faisal Asari, Planning Deputy for CD7. I know that you guys have had a lengthy hearing, so I'll be very brief. We feel that there are many significant benefits in passing a sign ordinance.
And who's the council member of District 7?
Councilmember Richard Alcone.
Okay. So I want to make sure everybody knows that.
I'm sorry?
I want to make sure everybody knows that. Go ahead.
Okay. Basically, we're very concerned with any ordinance that would halt any pending projects, specifically projects that have made a good faith effort to establish signs in their proposals. We have a specific project, Panorama Place. They've included signage in their EIR. They have talked to the community members about it and have talked to city staff about it as well. We are very concerned of an ordinance that would basically halt this project or reduce the financial feasibility of this. We're requesting a mechanism to grandfather this project and similar projects that have taken this good faith effort to include signage in their proposals before coming to full council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next, Richard Senna and Greg Freeman. Come on. You already have cue.
Hi, my name is Greg Freeman. I run the consulting practice for the LAADC. We've looked at the impact of on-site rule changes to the city's ability to attract businesses. I'll submit a report, but I'll just cover some of the highlights here. On-site signs provide information to consumers on the location, type, and price of goods and services that a business offers. They create brand awareness and recognition, and they induce purchases by heightening awareness of incipient demand. Reducing these services will reduce sales and hurt particular businesses. To believe otherwise is to deny the advertising influences purchase decisions. We're particularly concerned when, from a location and attraction standpoint, that the rules will create an uneven playing field. Existing businesses will be favored over new businesses because existing signage is grandfathered in. High visibility locations will be favored over less visible ones where signage is more critical. Locations along city borders near jurisdictions with more permissive rules will be at a disadvantage. And larger national chains that can afford alternative marketing strategies will be favored over smaller businesses, particularly retail establishments that depend on the cost-effective marketing that signs provide. Thanks very much, and I'll leave a copy of the study.
So you squeezed 5 minutes into 1 minute. That's pretty good. Okay, Sean Bagsby, Craig Lawson. Craig Lawson here, Sean Bagsby, Jeff McConnell, and Paul, I believe it's Royer. Okay. Come on up. Good afternoon.
Councilman, my name is Craig Lawson. I'm a land use consultant here in Los Angeles, and I've been following this issue very closely, participated in the City Planning Commission hearings, of which there were many. I support some of the provisions in the draft ordinance, including those that increase enforcement on illegal off-site signs. But there's a number of provisions that need to be carefully reviewed, and some of them need to be changed. I've been working on proposed sign districts, including the Figueroa and Olympic SUD, which was approved by the Planning Commission in December of 2008 and by your Plum Committee in February, just a couple of months ago. It will hopefully be before the full City Council very soon. I can tell you that sign districts go through an intense amount of scrutiny and public review, including environmental review and environmental clearance. We've been at this for more than 4 years and have had numerous public meetings and hearings. In fact, the SUD, the sign district process, is a good way to make sure that there is increased scrutiny and review of proposed districts. As you know, only 2 sign districts have been enacted in the last 7 years. There's several that are pending. Ours is one of the 2 that are proposed to be grandfathered, so they would be allowed under the proposed ordinance. There's others that would not be allowed, but should be. I suggest that you keep the language in Section 12 that provides for the grandfather clause for those 2 districts that have already been through the Planning Commission and through Plum Committee, that you consider adding back the other pending SUDs which are out there and have spent a lot of time and money to get to this point. To use the baseball analogy that we've been using already, many of these are already in the game. In fact, ours is in the 9th inning. We ask you to please don't change the rules in the middle of the game. Let's get through this. Also ask you to consider eliminating the minimum acreage requirement for new SUDs, especially for those in downtown.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson.
Thank you.
You can submit your statements in writing to make sure we get all of your comments. Next speaker, Jeff McConnell, Paul Royer, And B. Shu.
My name is Jeff McConnell. I'm here today on behalf of the California Sign Association. Throughout this process, today was the first public comment I have heard asking for reduced on-site signage. The proposed reductions to on-site sign area, number of signs, heights, and placement are purely the desire of the planning department. While their opinion should matter, it should not be the only one considered. Through this process, we have shown that the value of signage, the negative economic impacts, and unenforceability of the proposed changes. Yet the planning department has not addressed any of these concerns, nor the purpose of this ordinance. We have had lots of public comment, but little public discussion. We sincerely request you bifurcate the on-site sign regulations from this ordinance. Allow us time to work with the planning and building and safety to create a safe, workable, enforceable ordinance that incorporates appropriate time, place, and manner restrictions and considers drivers, not just pedestrians, using appropriate traffic safety calculations. There is no reason to connect on-site sign regulations to the proposed off-site regulations. It further risks the environmental clearance of this document and removes the council's ability to pass the off-site changes with an urgency clause that allows immediate implementation. There are over 30 problems with the on-site provisions of this ordinance at current count, ranging from a 6-foot height limitation for information signs, which means a parking sign could not be over the entrance, to a limitation of 400 feet of linear feet before you're allowed a pole sign. That could in fact make it impossible for a new tenant in a multi-tenant situation to even get a sign under the current sign area. It could all be used up by existing tenants and the existing sign. Finally, we have shown that the city does not have an on-site sign code problem, but an enforcement problem. If the city were to enforce its current rules, our visual environment would look much different. We encourage the city to create an on-site sign enforcement task force in partnership with the California Sign Association and other business organizations to reduce visual clutter before making sweeping changes to the code which do not follow the purpose of this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Paul Rohr, then B. Shu, and we'll have Diane, I believe it's Roslyn or Rosen.
I'm Paul Rohr, Manat Phelps and Phillips, and I respectfully request that the committee reinstates the provisions of the draft ordinance allowing sign districts initiated by council action or for which an application was submitted prior to the city's adoption of the ICO to be judged under the rules for which they were written. As originally drafted, the ordinance grandfathered only 7 sign districts. The Planning Commission reduced that number to 2. A difference between 2 and 7 may not seem like a really big deal for the city, but it is a really big deal for the 5 developers who have been patiently playing by the rules and have now had the rules changed on them. Because sign districts are subject to intense scrutiny by the city and the community, it takes many years of work before a sign district is adopted. Some of the 7 applicants have already spent over 4 years working with the city and the community, even though the current code requires that applications be heard by the Planning Commission within 75 days after submission. The city has not complied with the time limit stipulated by its code, and it is unfair to punish applicants for being patient. Failing to grandfather the 7 sign districts will victimize developers who played by the rules and didn't seek special enforcement or to expand their rights through litigation or other sort of scufflaw activities. With regard to future sign districts, we should not tie the council's hands or the hands of the communities by restricting signage to an arbitrary 20% increase or by privileging takedown programs above other forms of community benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. B. Shu.
Good afternoon. B. Shu for Related California. Related has been a partner with the city and the county on the Grand Avenue project for the past 4 years, and it's our intent at the appropriate time to be submitting an application for a sign district. First, I want to echo the comments made earlier by Shiraz Tangri from the Downtown LA Neighborhood Council. The proposed ordinance as it relates to sign districts sets a very high bar already for new sign districts. It reduces the eligible areas to 1% of the city and sets minimum size requirements that very few applicants will be able to actually meet. As one of the very few applicants that would probably still be eligible under the proposed thresholds, I want to express some specific concerns about the new requirements that were added by the Planning Commission at their last hearing, which we believe inappropriately limit council's discretion in reviewing new sign districts. Specifically, the requirement for 1-to-1 sign reduction is overly prescriptive. While we agree that it's a reasonable expectation that community benefits be provided where new sign districts are approved, we take issue with the idea that sign reduction is going to be the only avenue to get there. Grand Avenue is an example of an area that is not characterized by excessive sign blight, but it is in major need of other types of community benefits and community beautification. So there's no reason to take a one-size-fits-all approach when each district proposal is going to be reviewed individually by council anyway. We urge you to remove this part of the ordinance or modify it to allow other types of community benefits other than signage reduction for new sign districts. Also, the restriction to approve only a 20% modification of sign districts inappropriately limits council's discretion as well. The sign district is a tool that's meant to be able to respond to the individual character of the city's various districts. Again, there's no reason to tie council's hands now when you will see and evaluate every sign district as it comes through the process. In closing, I'd just like to remind you that there are already extremely high barriers to entry for new SUDs. They all get reviewed by Planning Department, Planning Commission, and come before the full City Council. They'll all be subject to their own secret review. So there's ample opportunity to judge each on its merits.
2 minutes.
Thank
Very
you.
close. Next, please. Is your name and address?
Good afternoon. I'm Diane Rosen, Chair of the Planning and Land Use of the Encino Neighborhood Council. And good afternoon, Mrs. Goldberg. For brevity, I turned in a letter to the clerk from the homeowners of Encino, but this is from us. The revised ordinance has many improvements over the current sign regulations. So we urge you to approve this proposal and pass it on to the full City Council with the exception of the following 5 items. 1, we strongly oppose the inclusion of sign districts anywhere in Los Angeles. 2, in particular, we oppose the inclusion of Encino, Sherman Oaks, Regional Center, Commercial in the list of potential sign districts. Residents living near Ventura Boulevard need not be exposed to flashing, blinking, brightly lit digital billboards or other off-site signs. 3, the stretch of Ventura Boulevard between the 405 and Balboa Boulevard is under control of the Cahuenga Ventura Boulevard Specific Plan, which now bans new off-site signs.
Okay.
This makes no logical sense to allow Ventura Boulevard to be designated as a sign district since the specific plan prevents all new off-site signage. 4, there should be no approval of any digital billboards anywhere in the city. 5, there should be no approval of super graphic signs anywhere in the city. And we thank you for your consideration.
Well, thank you. With 14 seconds to spare. Our last 2 speakers, Charlie Gill and Will Wright. Is Charlie Gill here? And Will Wright.
Hi, my name is Charlie Gill. Let me just adjust this for a second. Okay. My name is Charlie Gill. I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Los Angeles New Car Dealers Association. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, for having this hearing. On behalf of the 60 dealers located in the city, I respectfully oppose the draft ordinance before you today. We're not aware that concerns over on-site signage gave rise to the interim control ordinance in the first place. We see no reason why the proposed ordinance should include restrictions and prohibitions on signage that pertains to the business where the signage is located. Signage is an indispensable part of a dealership's identity and branding. While our existing signage appears to be exempt in some cases from the proposed ordinance, signage at a dealership that either newly locates or relocates within the city would be covered. That creates a system of different standards for competing dealerships, and the newer relocating dealerships might run afoul of very exacting manufacturer design and sizing requirements for signage. Wanted to quickly comment on the fact that the cities where the businesses are rated as favorable, for instance, Cerritos and Santa Clarita, have a large number of dealerships. And so it's clear that dealerships do abide by very stringent signage requirements when they are in place. But we do ask that there be a level playing field, and we ask that new dealerships or relocating dealerships don't have to face different requirements from already existing dealerships. That could create a real hornet's nest in terms of marketing and for the manufacturers. So we ask that you remove the on-site signage provisions from the proposal, and thank you for your work on this.
Thank you, sir. Our last speaker, Will Wright.
Must be nice to go last. Thank you. Thank you, Council, for hearing me today. My name is Will Wright, and I work with the American Institute of Architects. We're here to generally support the proposed ordinance as written, and I definitely want to commend the staff for going through this process, as it has been rather lengthy. We have 3 additional recommendations. With regards to sign districts, we recommend that these be allowed for commercial and PF zones only and not the R5 zone. And we also agree that there should be an additional criteria for 650,000 square feet or more so that we can accommodate some more of the dense urban development. With regards to sign types, other than the recommendations proposed for wall signs and super graphics and the elimination of, we don't think any further modifications to sign types should be done at this time. With regards to the comprehensive signage program, although we do support the zoning administrator's ability to adjust or define adjustments for for extension 20% or less, we don't think the comprehensive signage program is really helping to clean things up, that it might actually make everything a little bit more complicated, and that, in other words, these types of approvals should go through the sign district process. So, and with that, I'll give you our letter of recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. I do have Department of Transportation here, and I did want to bring him to the microphone, and it's important that every department is engaged and that we're working with every department that's going to have an influence in the implementation of this ordinance. So with that spirit in mind, I do know that the planning department has been working with building and safety, and I really want to solicit and encourage your cooperation in some of the more, how can I say this, interpretive elements of the language in which we start looking at this definition of hazard and how we create the parameters for that. And I know there's a law that's been there for 22 years. Now the issue is, how do you interpret and exercise that discretion? I just wanted to hear from you the level of participation either you've been able to demonstrate or you see we need to fulfill in the future.
Hi, good afternoon. Jay Kim from the Department of Transportation. We have been working with the planning staff, and at this juncture, we see this as an opportunity for us to actually better define, like you said, what really constitutes a traffic hazard or a driver distraction. And I think the direction given by the City Planning Commission to develop the guidelines, that's really an opportunity for us to kind of weigh in and perhaps look at these different parameters and take another fresh look and get a better sense of trying to balance those issues, the traffic hazard or driver distraction issues, with the need to sort of communicate to the larger public about where a business is. So I think we're trying to sort of come up with some kind of guideline in the future to better balance those two objectives. And our sort of ultimate aim is really to put something in the guideline as part of the ordinance so that we don't have this subjective review process that's currently what's in practice. And we really would like this opportunity to work with the various city departments as part of the task force to make that an objective.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your feedback and look forward to working with you. Any questions for the council? Thank you very much. I do have some real specific directives and questions that I'm hoping we could answer. Obviously, we're going to continue this for one more committee session, given the amount of feedback we have received. And with that in mind, one of the first things I'd like to direct is that we look at how we can include the advertisers who are participating in illegal signs, and what other cities are doing to include the advertisers as being liable in the process when they are part of an illegal or unpermitted sign. So that would be one of the report backs we'd hope to see. Also, ask planning to report back on the feasibility of allowing for less restrictive minimum acreage and or eligible square footage in zones where we have the comprehensive sign program. So, again, just want to look at the feasibility of that. I'm going to also ask the planning department to delineate the physical distinctions between interior and exterior signs. So that we have a clear understanding of what that means. Because that might capture the Dodger Stadium, Universal Studios issues. I'd like to direct the planning department to work with DOT to develop, as part of the one-year review, specific guidelines to ensure that new signs do not create a hazard to traffic. So I appreciate DOT's input. I'd like to ask the planning staff to discuss the inclusion of grandfathered sign districts. What was recommended in the original ordinance that was sent to the CPC, and to include in the current ordinance. So again, to try to cover the areas in which we had that discussion with those who are already in the pipeline. When we look at I want to ask how the planning department defines a sign impact area as it relates to the sign reduction program. Can the area be expanded? So that would be the other question that we could answer. I'll stop here. Councilmember Weiss, do you have anything else to add?
I have a lengthy list. There are actually 17 line items, although I just took one out because of something you mentioned. So that's about 16. And rather than read them and bore everybody and have the clerk not get them down, I'll just give them to the clerk. They are a list of items that Ms. Trifoletti has worked up in consultation with Dennis Hathaway and others to strengthen the provisions in the proposal, to fill in some of the gaps and loopholes, particularly with respect to super graphics and digital signs, to remove certain specific areas that have specific plans or that abut single-family homes from proposed SUD areas, and further clarifying matters. So I'm just going to provide this to Barbara. And I think your intent makes perfect sense to me, Mr. Chair, which is that this is a big one. We have to get our arms around it. So I'm not calling this a motion per se, because it's a request to get input and to get language. I think when we're back here, we're going to have an extended markup period, clearly whenever you schedule us to come back.
I'm going to try to get this done as soon as possible, but I also want to offer the planning department time to respond. I don't mean for my questions to be boring. I'm sure yours aren't either. But I think it's important to have a clear understanding of what the public is hearing from us as legislators and the reaction we're getting from their input. So there's a reason why I wanted to express it verbally out loud. Can the planning department, can you give us a time frame? Because we put a lot on the table here. If we can get the staff to come to the microphone. And again, the whole staff's done a yeoman's job in getting us to this place. So this is no reflection or lack of appreciation of your hard work. I do know the building and safety is hearing loud and clear that we need to enforce. That being said, Mr. Bell, and given the questions we've raised and the feedback we got from this first committee hearing, can you give me a time frame and the amount of time you need to get material back to us so that we can begin scheduling the next meeting?
I believe we could have a report back to you within 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yes.
Okay. So that would be the target date. 2 weeks for the report back. Give us some time to digest it and have our discussions, and then we can come back to committee.
Councilmember Reyes, if I could just make one comment, largely just clarify for the members of the audience, is this is a little bit different than maybe other legislative processes we've gone through, because we've had so many City Planning Commission hearings on this project, and there was 5 of them total. And as it went through the Planning Commission process, the Planning Commission directed staff to make some changes. So a lot of people have seen a lot of changes to the ordinance. I just want to clarify for the public's benefit is that the ordinance before you was recommended by the City Planning Commission and presented to you as the Planning and Land Use Management Committee of the City Council. As I hear your direction is that what we will be doing is looking at that City Planning Commission recommended ordinance and making only those changes that you've directed us today, so the ones that you've mentioned verbally, and then the 17 that Councilmember Weiss is provided in writing. We'll make changes.
Well, you know, at the risk of boring everybody here, I really would feel more comfortable if we read some of those questions into the record out loud, so we all know what it is that's being asked of the staff, and the public realizes what is being contemplated by Councilmember Weiss. So if you can use your speed reading skills.
Thank you, Councilmember Reyes. And again, for the record, Vince Bertoni, Deputy Planning Director, and I will do it as I will summarize quickly as possible. Those 17 issues relate to supergraphics, square footage of wall signs and temporary signs, restrictions on temporary signs for non-commercial messages, dealing with temporary signs covering windows, installation of temporary signs, the amount of time, a ban on off-site digital signs, existing digital signs in terms of the regulation on brightness and illumination, dealing with certain specific plans that prohibit off-site signs.
When you say dealing with, I mean, what's the action verb there?
This is the actual, I'll read the entire comments, number 8. Because the Westwood Village and Ventura Boulevard specific plans expressly prohibit off-site signs, those geographic areas should be eliminated from the list of eligible SUD areas, specifically. There's another one regarding Century City, the fact that it should be removed because it abuts single-family homes. We should revisit the whole idea of sign impact areas for sign districts to perhaps expand them if a nexus can be established. Clarify that signs that have been unlawfully erected shall come into conformance with new regulations. Another item we're dealing with with non-conforming signs regarding replacement of non-conforming signs, a regulation regarding temporary construction walls and whether or not they should allow to have identification placards, clarifying how civil penalties will be assessed and who's held liable, clarify the definition of exterior signs, whether they're visible or not visible from the right-of-way, and that SUDs, sign districts, should not be allowed on or near ecological preserves, and clarify the appropriate restrictions on sign districts to protect the city's ecological resources. And there's also, and there's another one regarding sign districts and ecological preserves.
Okay, so for the sake of clarity and transparency, we've read the questions and directives of Councilman Weiss for the record. Mr. Bell, anything you would like to add, any observations?
I think this provides a good roadmap for further investigation, and we'll be back with a discussion of the feasibility of incorporating these items into a revised ordinance.
With the Attorney's Office, or City Attorney's Office, any other comments or observations? Okay. So, in closing, I want to make sure that the stakeholders are still engaged with this process. We're going to do our best to be as responsive as possible with what we heard today. Comments are not falling on deaf ears. Quite frankly, well, I'll say it. If there was a sign post that was put up within the past 5 years that's illegal, and we know it has no permits, we can prove it. And there's a list of sightings, infractions, there's documents within building and safety. Can we take that sign out? Or is that too risky of a question?
I've pressed it this time. David Michelson, Office of the City Attorney, with me here, Jerry Burge, and also Sharon Cardenas. The city has, I think, engaged in aggressive enforcement conduct, certainly over the last 6 months, if nothing else, with building and safety, stepped up enforcement process. And these things tend to have to be done on a case-by-case analysis to determine what the situation is for any given particular sign, to make sure that the city is not exposed to really greater liability than would be appropriate. But orders to comply written by Building and Safety Department, orders to comply written by the Fire Department, referrals made over to the criminal branch of the City Attorney's Office. We are in court, both with criminal proceedings against sign owners and property owners who have engaged in illegal activity. We are in civil court. We have probably at any given moment 20 active lawsuits at different stages of litigation, mostly brought by the billboard industry or certain portions of the billboard industry who questioned the enforcement tactics of the city, who questioned the legality of our ordinances. And we have probably at any given moment in time 6, if not more, lawyers who spend a considerable portion of their day dealing with outdoor signage issues. And I know the planning department and the building and safety department have really ramped up as well. So the city is throwing a lot of resources at the issue. Whether, to answer your question specifically, the city can actually go out and take a crane and remove a sign. Again, we have to be very careful, look at the specific fact pattern to determine whether that would be the appropriate thing to do.
And I appreciate your answer, and that would be a report back if I can get what does it take for the city, given all the legal complexities, to be aggressive enough to take out these illegal signs. And you know, we heard from some of the companies that are following the rules that they've paid into a fund. So the assertion is the personnel to move in this direction, the assumption is we have the resources to allocate personnel to do this. Would that be an accurate conclusion?
No, I think that's perfectly accurate. I mean, to give you an analogy, if someone has built a structure, a home, for instance, without any permits, and the city goes through the process to declare the property a nuisance, the city can actually go in and bulldoze that property. It is a lengthy, drawn-out process to make sure people's property rights are being afforded due process. That process is out there, it's available. One of the things, and we've talked about this a little bit in the past, that folks should not lose sight of is the city of Los Angeles, like all other municipalities in the state of California, we are subject to, obviously, the California Constitution, but we're also subject to state statutes, state laws that the state legislature has put in place over the years. Today, we were in Sacramento, our office, testifying in front of the Senate Transportation Committee on Senate Bill 690, which Rocky Delgadillo, the city attorney, is the sponsor of that bill, and Senator Leno is carrying the bill. That Senate bill, if ultimately successful and signed by the governor, would eliminate the rebuttable presumption that the billboard industry has enjoyed for the last 25 years, that essentially says that if a billboard has been in place for more than 5 years, without citation being written against that billboard, the presumption of the billboard's lawful. Even if no one can find a permit, that law and other laws at the state level make it very difficult for local municipalities, including the city of LA, to really be able to fully roll up our sleeves and do a lot of the things we'd like to do. And that's why the city attorney, Rocky Delgadillo, is sponsoring that bill. Similar bill was sponsored last year that allowed for amateurization, to actually get non-conforming. We heard testimony about this earlier today from some of the folks here in this room. If the bill that Rocky sponsored last year would have been adopted by the legislature, and it unfortunately died at the legislature, it would have put into place an amortization process, which would have allowed the city of LA and other cities to, over a period of time, amortize out of existence, at little cost to city taxpayers, older non-conforming billboards. But again, that died in Sacramento. So it's my own point of, and I apologize for going on, but this is a much bigger issue than just here at the city, as important as this is. It's Sacramento as well.
I know, and again, because we are at this juncture, the capacity for this city to perform is not just a municipal action, it's a state and federal First Amendment right issue that we've been wrestling with. And I just want to put that on the table as the way it's been shared with myself. The building and safety, can someone come to the podium? Is Andrew still here or did he leave? There's an assertion made that companies have paid into a fund because they are following the rules. Is that fund account currently in existence? The funds that were paid into the city for the purposes of dealing with the signs and sign issues?
The only fund that there is that which is connected with the off-site sign inspection program, where the sign companies pay $186 per sign structure, and it pays for us to do the survey. This is for billboards only, and that is the only fund that there is.
I need a report back from your department and with the CAO to clarify what has been paid into this fund. I need to know what resources we have to implement this law. Enforcement is everything, and we need to know what we have within our resources to effectuate some level of enforcement. So with the help of the CEO and your department, a clear picture of who has paid what, how much, and which fund. Can you get that?
Yes, but actually that program was already approved by an ordinance, and we're carrying
I'm asking to know what is the status. I want to know how much is in there. And I want to be clear as to what does it take to enforce this law. So I want to make this as transparent as possible. Okay?
Understand.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so I think that concludes, and again, I suggest and I highly recommend the stakeholders to continue working in this process, and I think we're just at the beginning still, but we'll keep working hard. So that being said, that concludes item number 4. We do have some cards on public comment. Kevin Norton, Stash Maliski.
Just so you know, most of those cards were submitted as public comment because they were late for item number 4.
Okay, then they're here public comments. We got to give them their 2 minutes.
All right.
So William Dalbeck, Stash Maliski, and Kevin Norton, please come on up. It's public comment. It's the comment on items that are not on the agenda.
What's your name?
Councilmember Reyes, mine was on item 4, so I do not have a public comment.
Thank you.
Stash Maliski, can I comment on an item that is on the agenda?
Not on the agenda. You can put this as public comment. Thank you, sir. Okay, seeing no one else, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.